Okay, seeing it's past the 10 o'clock hour, the Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte and the governing body of all other special assessments and taxing districts for which said board so acts is now meeting in regular session. Only those items that indicate a specific time will be heard at that assigned time. All other items may be taken out of sequence to accommodate the public and staff availability. Supervisor Gitlin, would you lead us in the pledge?
With pleasure. Everybody please face the flag, right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, are there any new employees to be introduced? Okay, seeing no new employees. Counselor, are there any reportable actions from closed session?
Yes, the board voted 5-0 to defend the case John Alexander versus Board of Supervisors for the County of Del Norte, CVP T 13-1244.
Okay. Are there any deletions, corrections, or additions from board members to the agenda at this time? In order to add an item to the agenda, the matter must have come to the attention of the county subsequent to the posting of the agenda, and the matter requires action before the next regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Okay, I am going to make an announcement on it, and for some reason we didn't have it on the agenda today. We will have a special meeting on Thursday afternoon. It'll be an hour meeting. In regards to an appointment, we've had a formal request from Cedar Coast to appoint a supervisor as a representative of the board to their study. So we will have a discussion, and it will be a one agenda item on that meeting. And I'll make an announcement at the end of, and we can check the times and availability for the room, Jay or Tony, one of the two of you. And then we'll make a decision whether we participate in the study or not, under what parameters. So. Okay, right now we are going to hear brief reports and announcements from board members related to programs, projects, travel, and committees. Supervisor Finigan, would you like to start?
Yeah, unfortunately I was not at the last meeting because I was representing the county and the state at the National Association of Counties. But I'm not going to tell you everything that went on since I saw you last, and try to just hit the high points. I'm not going to go into every constituent that I talked with and every problem. But there were some impactful meetings that I did participate in. So since I saw you last, I met with the USDA along with the Tri-Agency to talk with their representative about the loans that were overdue with the Tri-Agency and how that impact economic development in this county, what we could do about forgiveness of some of those loans to make this community available for some USDA loans in the future, and to try to ease the pain. A lot of this just goes into communication. I think, without pointing fingers at anybody in particular, some of the tactics used by members of the Tri-Agency, namely the city, when they do what they do with the hotels, the receivership, basically sunk Tri-Agency. And so there needs to be better communication with our own representatives. I guess that goes to what I brought up several years ago, the policy of committee, when we adopted our goals, is that we pledged that the county would not do anything that negatively impacted any other government within this community without first talking to them. At some point in time, I wish the other elected bodies would take that same position. It sure would be beneficial. Had a UROC 2x2, the first one that we've had in a while, and it set the stage for one that we just recently had. It was a good meeting. Attended the PUC committee with RHS, talked about broadband, talked about TV. I think that was reported out last time. Went to NACO. California really is on the cutting edge as far as a lot of the policies that they bring up the National Association of Counties, which is NACO. I represent the Western Interstate region there, as well as California. We had our caucus. So the dynamic that happened there within the caucus is something that we may be seeing. We were always afraid of, and I think you're going to see more of in the future, which is the dominance of Southern California bullying their way into policies and votes. And I bring that up for two reasons. One, because it happened, and fortunately, to toot my own horn, I was running the meeting. We were able to keep CSAC, the solidarity there, that we took a unit vote rather than splitting up the vote in the cloud of California on the national level. But we have a couple elections that are coming up next election cycle, so a year from November. And both our state assembly person and our state senator are not going to be running. They're going to be vacancies. And here to date, there has not even been a whisper of anybody north of the Sonoma-Mendocino line that would represent our district. Our district and the senatorial district runs from the Golden Gate Bridge to the Oregon border. So if you think this LA is going to be the problem, we better start grabbing the attention of those in Sonoma County and Marin County for our needs here. Just a heads up. After I got back, and I did a field trip when I was there too. The hotel we stayed at was the hotel that John and Jackie Kennedy stayed at the last night of his life. And then so I also went down to Dealey Plaza and to the School Book Depository to see that and stand on the ground where the assassination took place. And then you come back to the hotel where there's pictures and memorabilia of how alive they were, and what a travesty that changed our nation for good. So I came back and I took it a little easy before I delved back into the constituency, and I took my daughter, who's 13, and 3 of her friends. There was supposed to be 1. It turned out to be 3. So I had 4 13-year-old girls, just to show you that was a cakewalk compared to some of this other stuff that I do. And we went to, we went down to San Jose. We went to Great America, and then I took them to a night game at the AT&T Park or Pac Bell and watched the Cubs. And then the next day we went to Golden Gate Park to the Science Museum and to the Steinhardt Aquarium. And I tell you, 4 days with 4 13-year-old girls was a pleasure and really a cakewalk to some of the stuff we're probably going to do here today. Came back in an airport JPA meeting. It's on the agenda later, so I'm not going to go into it too much, except that I don't think I've been more frustrated and more disappointed on some of the direction and some of the obstacles that have been thrown our way than I was at that last meeting. Then I also had a CSAC calls, the State Association calls, officer calls to set agendas. Also went down to Sacramento to have an executive board meeting there. We talked about the Affordable Care Act. Del Norte County is going to come out fine. We are going to be part of the CMSP program, so the allocation, the 60-40 split, actually will leave money in the coffers for us to deal with not just Gerry, help me here, not the homeless, but the indigent care. So it's not just that, but it also will leave money in the coffers to develop programs for our safety net in this community that we really do so well with partners. Talked about AB 109, which has to do with community correction plans and how the sheriffs are dealing with the early releases. I will be at the Sheriff's Association meeting in Shasta talking to them about that. Then we also, probably on everybody's mind, is this new Supreme Court decision, which is not the final decision regarding early release of 10,000 prisoners out of the prisons in the state of California. It's an arbitrary number they're trying to reach at 137.5% of capacity. It is arbitrary. They say it's 10,000. It's really closer to about 1,900. There is a strategy. I can tell you emphatically that there are not going to be any high-profile, violent sexual offenders that are going to be released to Del Norte County. Okay, but the real tale of the tape is going to take place January 1st as to what takes place there. Had another UROC 2x2 with Supervisor Hemmingsen. I'm sure he's going to report on it, but it was great. The communication is good. We haven't got into some of the more substantive issues, but as far as finding ways to agree on some of the travel issues, it was a very good meeting, and the communication lines are great, and I want to commend our staff, especially in planning, for working with them. They had nothing but good things to say about our staff there. That's about it, other than some of the other things in the news have been regarding the funding of 199, and I just publicly want to acknowledge Supervisor Chair Sullivan has been the driving force behind that. Even when it was first brought up when I was a member of LTCO, and there were some that said, hey, 199 is fine, but we also need to focus on 101, which we started doing probably 17 years ago. Mike is the one that dogged this money for 199, and congratulations. Thank you, Mike.
Supervisor Hemmingsen was pretty actively involved in that as well. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, Supervisor McClure.
Yes, thank you. I, in the past couple of weeks, have been studying the Coastal Commission agenda, which the meeting starts tomorrow in Santa Cruz. But as far as locally, the Redwood Park Association is now currently scrambling to figure out how to keep the Crescent City Visitor Center open permanently, and it appears that the Redwood Park Association staff is actually going to take over the job of the National Park Service because of sequestration and lack of funds. But it was important enough to the Park Association that they believe that economic development with tourism dollars for that visitor center is vital, so that visitor center is going to stay open. It's going to be a stretch on what we do with our partners in the future, but it will, it is going to stay open for the year 13-14 in the next fiscal year, which is a good thing to know. EMS met. We have there were some issues that our local Sutter was possibly going to adjust some of the different nursing assignments, which could affect the pediatric care authorization and a couple of issues with the ambulance itself. And they feel that that's going to be taken care of, and we're not going to meet that crisis. I participated in the fair and made thousands of doughboys. I tabled a couple of different political organizations. I attended the auction and wasn't able to buy a swine this year because they were down about half the number of children who participated. So the traditional buyers were there and they were spending a considerable amount of money, so I appreciate their support for 4-H. I also had the opportunity to speak to a group that is a group of young citizens between the ages of, I think it's 16 and 22. And it is part of the Center for Rural Policy and the Cal Endowment. And it's a summer intensive session on training young members of our community on how to be more socially active and how to take responsibility. And I walked into a room at 11 o'clock in the morning on a sunny summer day, and there must have been 75 students in the room who were engaged and actively asking questions. My topic was on restorative justice and restorative practices within the school system, and they were keenly aware of what that meant, and they were keenly aware of the negative impacts of suspensions and of children missing school, and talked. I mean, it was a breath of fresh air to walk in, and they're the same kids that you probably saw at the fair doing Rethink Your Drink, but they have a myriad of projects, and their energy was absolutely, it was astounding, and it was really nice to see kids in the middle of summer, in the middle of a class at 11 o'clock, instead of being at the river, they were engaged in how to become a more proactive citizen. So kudos to the Center for Rural Policy and the Cal Endowment folks, and I hope I'm not missing some other funder that might be behind that, but they did a great job. If you've been following the park system in California, we are entering into an experimental project, and it's called the Parks Forward, California Parks Forward, and it's a commission of leaders throughout California that are going to come up and look at different ways that our state parks can partner with what kind of partnerships they can have. Redwood National and State Park has been identified originally in their language when they started to bring this together. But it's a very strong leadership group across the state. Carol Hart, who is on the Parks and Recs Department and assistant out of Sonoma County, is on, and Keyhole out of San Diego is on, and you can go on the web page and see some really heavy hitters that are going to be participating. But the best part that I think that I saw on this list is that the executive director is Ken Wiseman. And Ken Wiseman was the director that was part of the MLPA process when that was moving forward in California. And Ken Wiseman was the one that gave ear to our plea that said, look, we believe that we can come up with a unified array if we can work locally. And he bought into it. So I'm looking forward to reminding Ken that we are a community that knows how to establish partnerships, knows how to get things done in relationship to working with each other, because for so long we've done so much with so little that it requires those partnerships. So I'm looking forward to having that this community will actually get a fairly strong voice in the Parks Forward Commission and possibly help define how state parks operate and look the next 50 years out. I have had a conversation with the Fair Board. They are looking at trying to find options for their way of being able to fund. And they were at kind of a crossroads and needed to possibly see if Wes Chesbrough, our assemblyman, would be willing to start participating. They talked to Jim Nelson because part of what they were talking about is the possibility of, maybe a bond of some kind, or who knows what they are going to move forward. But they didn't get the legs that they needed, but I was able to contact Wes, and Wes was able to contact them, and I think that the ball is moving forward. So Wes has never forgotten Del Norte County in all of his years as the Assembly, and he continues to work for us. The Senior Center, we met. We still have we're still dealing with CDS on the funds that were inappropriately appropriated, and there's still several $100,000 on the table that are being negotiated as to what is owed. And it wasn't that the funds weren't spent on appropriate projects. It's the possibility that those projects weren't properly vetted and a matrix made for those that were the most deserving. So that's still an ongoing saga, and we're working on it. I met myself, Mike, Jay, Dr. Duncan, and Dr. Caldwell met and tried to talk a little bit about next steps with the relationship to Sutter and the relationship to moving forward. I met with a young man from Humboldt County. His name is Hezekiah Allen, who has thrown his hat into the Assembly race. Currently, there are about 5, I think, that have thrown their name in for the Assembly race. I, too, read about Noreen Evans announcing, but I read it through the Press Democrat, and I've written a letter to the editor of the Press Democrat, because in the Press Democrat, they identified the 2nd Senatorial District as going from Humboldt County down. Did not mention that Del Norte County was part of that district, so I thought maybe they should be reminded that we are not a part of Oregon at this point. The other is that I would like to bring to the attention of the board and ask that we actually write a letter of dismay to the Regional Water Quality Board, who have recently taken a stand that the dewatering of our creeks because of marijuana gardens, they can't do anything about it because they are too fearful that it is too dangerous. And I find that to be absolutely unacceptable. Otherwise, I would think that there would be the possibility of farmers just throwing up a little concertina wire around their ranch, having a couple guys carrying a gun, and maybe nobody would come and make sure that the creeks were clear. So we have to, as a community, tell water quality that that is not okay. The amount of rat poison that's going into these creeks, the amount of pesticide that's going into these creeks, and the dewatering that is happening, and the grading that is happening, and everything that's getting washed into the creeks. We're spending millions of dollars for salmon restoration. And if we don't reach up into Redwood Creek, our salmon are done. And so water quality needs to be reminded that, fearful or not, something must be done. So I'm hoping that this board will be willing to take up that action. And I think that is it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Supervisor Hemmingsen.
Yes, thank you. Started off with a trip to Chico for a NORTEC meeting, which is the Northern Rural Training and Employment Consortium. Our executive director resigned, Stuart Knox resigned for bigger and better things. He will be sorely missed. He's only been there for 4 or 5 years. He was there before I was on the board, but he's done an outstanding job. In the interim, Michael Cross is going to take over. Michael Cross has been there for a number of years, actually longer than Stuart. So very knowledgeable, and I'm sure he'll make a good replacement, at least for the interim, until we can find either choose him as the permanent or find another replacement. I met with CAO and the building department on some communications issues, and hopefully we got those squared away. I also met with Hezekiah Allen, who is running for State Assembly District 2, which is ours. Seemed like a nice enough guy and seemed to know the issues that we're dealing with. Seemed to be a reasonable guy, but of course he's running for office, so we'll see what happens when it comes. What comes out of. We'll see what comes out of that. Our local transportation commission formed a finance committee meeting, which I was part of. So we had our first meeting to lay out the financial changes. The reporting of the money from LTCO, which is the local transportation commission, has changed so much that we've changed our policies and kind of moved to a private firm. Chawel Benz and Hartwick actually are going to take over the reporting of all the funds and the incoming and outgoing, as well as as our auditor, county auditor. So we're going to kind of have a double check there of all the things that have been going on, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but can be cumbersome sometimes. But I think we've got it ironed out to where it should be pretty seamless, so I think it'll work fine. As Supervisor Finigan said, we did have a Border Coast Regional Airport Authority meeting where we approved our amended coastal development permit application and runway safety area mitigation plans. It's kind of disappointing that we were pulled off the I'm sure we're going to get into that more with the report, but we were pulled off the agenda for the Coastal Commission, and we've kind of missed our deadline, which is a whole other issue that we'll probably talk about with the report from Jim Bernard later on in the meeting. Had supposedly a coordination meeting with the Six Rivers National Forest. Tyrone Kelly was not able to attend, but sent Merv George in his place, who's the assistant forest supervisor for our area. I really liked Merv. He was very engaging and had some good insight on what's going on. Unfortunately, our coordination ends up being more of a 2x2 informational stuff. County's input is really not taken very serious. It's very disappointing. During the meeting, they informed us that they had one incorrect map out of the 5 maps that they had given us. It turns out that all the maps were incorrect. The information was incomplete that we were given. And then later on had a public meeting, which was 3 days later roughly. I think our meeting was on Friday. The public meeting was on Wednesday. So we didn't even have the proper maps or the proper information, and supposedly that was all given out at the public meeting. So it's a little disappointing in our relationship and our communication with with Six Rivers National Forest. Not very happy about any of that. Traveled down to Del Mar, which I can't say it was enjoyable, but it was memorable. With the delays, we spent a lot of time in airplanes, just sitting, not traveling. We got to see the inside of the San Francisco terminal throughout the night till the early morning. We spent the night there. It was not as comfortable as you might think, even though they do have a lot of places to sit. Not very many places to lay down, and those were all occupied by people who were smarter than we were and got booths and things. Of course, we didn't have much time to do it. We got there about midnight, and the flight flew out at 5:50 the next morning. So got into Del Mar about 8 o'clock, maybe a little after 8, and had just enough time. A meeting started at 9, so we had just enough time to shower and change clothes and get to the meeting. So we were up for a considerable amount of time before we got to the meeting, but as Supervisor Finigan said earlier, the project got funded. We're very happy about that. The Transportation Commission has been supportive of this project from the beginning, and their support showed. We were the only ones there that got an ovation, so they applauded us for coming all that way, and we're happy to see us. So we're real happy about the project, and hopefully that will move on. After the local transportation finance committee meeting, then we had a local transportation committee meeting. Actually, after the CTC meeting, the California Transportation Commission, we had our local meeting where we approved the financial policy changes that we agreed to at our committee meeting. So that went very well. As Supervisor Finigan said, 2x2 with the UROC staff went very well. They're wanting to do some improvements to Klamath Circle as well as Klamath Boulevard, and we're trying to find ways to help them or allow them to do that. And there was also some issues that were brought up that Supervisor Finigan wanted to know if they had if there was any way they could help us remove the vegetation off the levees. I asked them if they could support a reroute of last chance grade, and they were willing to look into both of those things, and we're very interested in seeing a realignment of the last chance grade. So we're trying to move forward. We got the 199, 197 project taken care of. Now we need to move on. Not that our focus has left last chance grade on 101, because the failure there, we've had a one lane highway there for the entire year since January. That to me is a failure, because 101 should be at least a 2-lane highway, not being stopped in the middle of a highway. That's just not the proper thing. So now we're going to focus on partnerships, getting a plan, and then starting to move forward on that. I did attend the fair and the rodeo. It all looks good. The fair has its issues, and we're going to be looking into seeing if we can't alleviate some of their problems down the road. Had an inordinate amount of constituent calls. Not that I don't receive quite a few, but a lot of people interested in the hospital, solid waste, had some stuff with the building department. I don't hear much complaining about the building department, and I think it's just more of a minor communication thing, and I think we're getting that squared away. They're getting a new checklist going, so I think we're moving on that, and hopefully that will all take care of itself.
All right.
And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Supervisor Gitlin.
Thank you. Well, Blight's in the news a lot. The Take a Bite Out of Blight program has been quite active in this last 2 weeks. Volunteers of our Daily Bread Ministries are about halfway through clearing out debris on a property on Waldo Street, and also received a phone call from a property owner and occupant, the son occupies in the 800 block of Law Street, and we are taken a bite out of blight on both of those properties. In the next couple of days, those properties will be cleared at no cost to the taxpayer. Also in this loft situation, they go to abatement court, and they're looking at thousands of dollars worth of fines. So we're trying to help the homeowner there avoid that, and I think we will be successful. Assisted a resident in a constituent removing a mattress which he put on his front lawn until the trash came. We hauled it down to the transfer station. He was very appreciative. I also want to recognize the homeowner Susan White, 344 Pebble Beach Drive, who contacted me to let me know she's cleaning up the front of her property along our beautiful coastline. Thank you, Susan, for doing your part in taking a bite out of blight. Also pleased to announce the no trespassing signs, no loitering trespassing signs have arrived and been erected on the county-owned 3.5-acre parcel next to the Walmart. There are a total of 12 signs prominently displayed, which will now allow our law enforcement to patrol and remove individuals who are violating that area. I also want to offer my heartfelt thanks to all those who donated time, our volunteers at Take a Bite Out of Blight, our Daily Bread Ministries, the Boy Scout Troop 1077, Dave Mason, our code enforcement officer, Heidi Kunstall, Tim Athey, thank you very much for donating your time. And of course, donated funds came from the Sheriff's Association and Walmart. Thank you again. This past Saturday, I went along on a ride-along. I've always wanted to do that with the Sheriff's Department, and one of the first stops we made was stopping at that same county-owned property and enforcing the no trespassing signs. There was someone in there, and he was escorted off and told he can't be there anymore. Sorry to say there's some more refouling of that property, but we're going to have that cleaned up very soon, and we'll have the property secured with donations for fencing along there also. Again, no dollars from our general fund were expended to clean up this area. We received a gun-related call when I was on my ride-along, and what I witnessed was real teamwork from a very diminished staff of deputies who protect us. And I want to recognize that at this time, these men and women, their efforts cannot be discounted. Law enforcement is very dangerous work. I left that day with the same mindset I had when I entered, that Delaware County needs more deputies, and public safety should be our primary focus in our local government. In the coming meeting, I hope the board will address our spending priorities, and I will work as long as I can and as hard as I can to effectuate a priority with our law enforcement. Thursday, August 12th, I addressed the monthly luncheon of the Republican Women Federated at the Lighthouse. I announced at the luncheon that Delaware County will be hosting a dinner, which includes State Party Chairman Jim Brulte and Assembly Member Tim Donnelly, who also has announced his candidacy for governor. I'm very proud to be appointed his county chairperson for Assembly Member Donnelly. And Angie and I will be hosting a Sunday wine and cheese event in mid-September for those of you who wish to meet and greet the gubernatorial candidate, Donnelly. And please contact me in my office if you're interested. I attended all 4 days of the fair. I really enjoyed the rodeo, and I really enjoyed the demolition derby. I'm told the fair was a great success, and that's great. On a bit of a more somber note, I noticed in the triplicate that the pedestrian-related accidents have jumped dramatically. Well, nationwide, we're really doing a good job that overall deaths have diminished in collisions. I think it's gone from 43,000 nationally down to about 32,000. But quite the opposite has happened with pedestrian-related accidents and deaths. They've actually spiked about 10%. And I want to just share with you, we all need to be particularly vigilant as we're walking out of wherever it is we're walking. I walked out of Safeway yesterday, and some guy flew by me. He must have been going, I thought, 30 miles an hour. I never saw him coming up, and he just blew right by me. And again, when we're walking, and we're coming out of stores, and we're on the streets, and, you know, we have our cell phones on, we really need to be vigilant, because this is a problem. And I'm hopeful that we're all pedestrians, but also when we drive our vehicles, that we're cognizant of the people that are on the street. Del Norte's largest landowner, and Supervisor Hemmingsen mention to his last chance grade, but Del Norte's largest landowner, Green Diamond, escorted local businessman Kurt Stremberg, former Supervisor Chuck Blackburn, and I through the property between mile marker 14 and Damnation Creek was where we were concentrating. Now, it's a distance of about 3 miles. And I observed the very route that might be one that is going to be selected as an alternate route to go around the crippled last chance grade. So I saw this property, and the local broker, Kurt Stremberg, and Supervisor Blackburn and I noticed that the impact on the state parks was almost at a minimum at a certain point on this road called N200, where there would only be approximately 2 to 3 acres of impacted property across the state parks. That's actually pretty good news. And the whole distance might be less than 3 miles in terms of where it starts and where it ends up. And this is all very good news in trying to find a solution to last chance grade. I also want to make mention of the issue of the thousands and thousands of felons that are, will hopefully not be reduced. The number came up as 9,600. I'm hearing that it has been reduced down to 2,000. I haven't had any validation. I spoke with the governor's office, and at that time, which was earlier in the month, August, it was 9,600, and they're trying to find out what to do with these folks. And I would respectfully request our board direct our governor that at no time should these felons be released out into the street. I don't care if it's 1,900 or it's 9,600. They need to serve their sentences. So I would hope that our board would draft a letter of opposition to the governor that at no time should this be considered. Quite frankly, there are plenty of open beds in adjacent states with prison beds available at literally half the cost. And of course, we have private prisons in our state that can be contracted. So I'm hopeful that that remedy will be followed. And again, I know we're going to hear regarding the Border Coast Authority airport issue. I'm extremely disappointed in what I've heard. I had a long conversation with Mr. Merrill, Robert Merrill of the North Coast Director, as to why this is not on the August agenda for a permit. He explained to me it's extremely complicated. I realize that, but we've had a long time to do research this and come to resolution. And why it has been pulled is just beyond me. And I asked him, I pleaded with him, can you not get this back on the agenda on an emergency meeting, because the Santa Cruz meeting is the 14th. He said no. 10-day window is best we can do, and we're past that point. So he scheduled the meeting, and this is what I'm just scratching my head on for September 11th to 13th in Eureka. But this is after the fact. This is after the August 31st deadline that FAA needs all its paperwork in. So we're scheduling the meeting, and then the deadline has passed. Well, I don't know. My experience with government might be a bit limited, but a deadline is a deadline. And if we exceed the deadline date, we can send all the letters we want from the Coastal Commission to the FAA Grants Division asking for a delay. And the reality is we're not going to get that extension. So all of this is going to be for naught. This is a $14 million project. There's thousands, scores of jobs available. This is a real window of refreshing air to our economic climate here, and it looks like it's an opportunity squandered. I'm extremely disappointed. We will get to the bottom of this and why this happened. I promise you I'll be unrelenting in that. And I refer back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, it's been probably one of the busiest 3 weeks since our last meeting. I do want to recognize former Supervisor Blackburn, my predecessor, who's in the meeting today. Hey, Chuck, how's it going? We attended a special meeting regarding a request for, that we'll be talking about that a little bit later. Attended the Delano Solid Waste Management meeting, accepted the retirement of the Executive Director, and the program manager has stepped up as the acting director, and we are in the process of looking for an interim director. The authority also filed the police report for $29,000, approximately a little under $29,000 that we have not been able to find. So it's been a very active period in terms of structural-wise within that organization. Got a tour of the fire break up on the conservation easement on Hiachi Mountain. Superintendent Jeff Daniels, Road Superintendent Jeff Daniels took me on a tour, and they've done, for any of the folks that live in Hiachi, it's an amazing work that the Alder Camp crews came in, and they've just got this, if a fire comes over, it's not going to be, it's a pretty, it's about 100 feet, the buffer that's put up there. So something that's been discussed for a long time, and it's actually come to fruition. The Alder Camp crew, they worked I mean, it's amazing how much work they got done in such a short period. So we're really grateful that got put in place. Attended a meeting in Smith River for discussing the closure of Ray's Market. Our CAO Jay Serena and I were there, as well as representatives of C&K Market. The communities, obviously, there were over 100 people there. That shows you in Smith River how big a concern that is. The biggest concern that we're running into is making sure that we get some type of grocery, some type of food supply in Smith River, especially for folks that can't travel. A lot of us have the ability to go, back and forth to town and back, but there's a lot of folks out there that can't. And we want to make sure, I know that we're in an active involvement, and there is a working group in Smith River that is looking to resolve this issue. We are appreciative of C&K showed up they did not have to show up. They're a private business. There was no reason necessarily for them to show up and explain why this had happened, but they had been losing money since 2008. So it's in private business, when you're losing money, at a certain point you have to shut the doors and move on. It's not government funded. It's a private business, and that is their choice to close that particular market. The positive that did come out is you have a group that's very anxious to get something done, and so when the community gets involved with things, we've seen it with Kidtown, we've seen it with other major projects, things happen. So I'm hopeful that something will be done to put a business in that location that will serve the community out there. Attended a special solid waste meeting, and then also had a meeting on the same note with Chair Ania, Gene, the city manager, and then Jay from the county, and we had a meeting with Dave Tyson, who's the former city manager of Eureka, to look at putting an interim director in that location right now on solid waste, and more to come on that at some point. On a lighter note, I've got a chance. I attended the Matt Wakefield, Deja Hartwick wedding, enormous wedding out in Smith River, and it was a great wedding, and I want to congratulate that couple. It was a lot of fun. Also had a meeting with Hezekiah Allen, who is a Humboldt County guy who is running for state assembly. So it's always appreciative, obviously there's going to be a whole bunch of other people that pop up now that the position's open. We want them to come up to Delaware County. They need to be aware, as Supervisor McClure said, that Delaware County is part of that district, and we want their attention up here in a positive way, and they need to understand the history in Delaware County and our crux of being this much public land ownership, and we need the help on that. So I'm grateful they do come up. Had a meeting regarding last chance grade. Myself, Rich Ania from the city, Tamara Layton, the executive director of local transportation commission meeting, and Brad Medham, who is the new person within Caltrans appointed to last chance grade. We are in the process right now of getting people more familiar with the roads, both on the old Miller-Relland property, which is the Mill Creek acquisition, as well as we've already had a meeting. We got a tour of Supervisor Hemmingsen, and I got a tour of Green Diamond. It is a top priority within local transportation commission meeting, or commission, excuse me, LTCO, to address last chance grade and do it. And from our perspective, we do not want to be cut off, and there is not a plan B right now, and that's very disturbing because we will be cut off for months, if not years, from the south. So to us, that's a vital concern. From the environmental community, I would hope they would come to the table on this, because if it does fail, we're going through. There isn't going to be the amount of environmental work on it if it fails. So let me rephrase that. I think Supervisor Hemmingsen, it has failed. So before it gets to the point it drops off, as it's done before in the past, we need to find a solution that is going to allow us to go through and get off of that cliff. And for the main driver is safety. So people have to come first in this scenario. So we are actively working on that. On another note, attended the county fair. Went for a couple days. Went to the auction. Got myself a nice red coffee mug, an expensive one at that. But my son sold his chickens, laying hens. I want to thank Helen Ferguson and the folks at the Grange. They do an awesome job. There are actually three groups represented: the Grange, 4-H, and then also FFA. They do an awesome job. The kids are all nervous, and the kids do a phenomenal job with that. And it's a great event for confidence boosting, and also they can see the money side of it, because I did explain to him after he sold his chickens where the money was going, and he wasn't completely thrilled about that, but that's priorities. So had a 2x2 meeting with Supervisor Hemmingsen and CAO Serena with the Forest Service. They informed us the maps that we had were incorrect, that they had given us before, and so they were going to give us a new set of maps. And they're referring to a 2009 map that has never been officially approved. That's really disturbing. That did not go through the vetting process, and that's where we have our concern. And the problem we keep running into the Forest Service, we've had a mediated meeting with user groups, environmental groups, and we were that close to, literally 6 miles of road that we were disagreement on. And what keeps coming back to as the alternative they want to propose is nothing like's been discussed. It's like the ranger was not at the meeting. That's how bad things have gotten with that. So it continues. This is a 10-year process. This is amazing. It should not have taken this long, but the lack of communication and having all of these groups together in one room and coming to 6 miles of roads and not reaching some type of compromise is inexcusable. There should be the ability to come to the table on this, and which is kind of a slap in the face, not just to the county and the community and the user groups, but also the environmental groups that were involved in that too. To come that close and not come back with an alternative that both sides could at least realize there's a compromise in there. So we're back at square one basically at this point. Had a meeting with Supervisor McClure, CAO Serena, and Dr. Duncan and Dr. Caldwell, discussing the issues with Sutter Coast and the study they're having right now. And to kind of get everyone on the same page, we did decide to, and that's what the special meeting will be on Thursday. As soon as we find the times out, I'll announce it in the meeting, but to discuss an appointment of the potential appointment of a supervisor on the board. We also decided at the same time we would go forward with reaching out to Asante and Adventist and other groups to see about the possible of them coming in Delaware County. So we want to take a parallel path and go both ways in terms of discussing appointing somebody to the study under the right circumstances, and then also reaching out to other groups, because right now there really is no plan B, and that's what we want to come up with as plan going forward. And I think it's a very emotional issue. As I mentioned at the last meeting, we had a very well-attended 2x2 meeting, and it's a concern. There is a lot of fear in the air, and we want to come to some solutions on it and go forward. So that was the point of the meeting, and I thought it went relatively well on that, and obviously there'll be more to come on that. Attended the California Transportation Commission meeting in Del Mar. This was the meeting to get funding for construction on Highway 199. It's been a top priority, one of the top 5 priorities in the community, going back for the last decade. Previous boards have signed up on this: city, county, harbor, school district, chamber, and it was nice to kind of meet one of the high points. The milestones is getting funding for $15 million for Highway 199. Supervisor Hemmingsen is the vice chair of the Local Transportation Commission. Commissioner Doug Wakefield was there, and alternate commissioner Chris Howard were there, as well as executive director Tamara Layton. Tamara's done a lot of work on this. She's the one that figured out the Caltrans maze and the funding opportunities on this. So it is nice to start seeing that stuff come to fruition. It is ironic that we went to find a solution to transportation issues, and we ran into another transportation issue. We spent the night in the San Francisco airport because of delays, cancels. We were there from 12:30. The next flight was at 5:50 in the morning. It did not make sense to go get a hotel room for 2 hours of sleep. So we figured out and by the way, if you leave that airport after a certain hour, you cannot get back in until 4 in the morning. So we spent the night at the subway outside of the, it was extreme. Yeah. We were up 30 hours. We gave our presentation at Supervisor Hemmingsen. We got applause from the commission itself as well as the crowd that was there. I would say we were one of the few groups to have a large representation of our commission there, and they were grateful for it. It got unanimous support. There was no one that dissented on it. So that is a perfect example of partnerships in the process. Got my son, that's the first page, so now we're on the second page. Attended a night of hunter safety course with my son. I want to thank Steve Bigham. He does a great job with that program. The kids are very aware of the seriousness of that issue and anytime you deal with guns. And Steve did a very good job of driving home the seriousness and the safety issue of that. And also that same week, he attended band camp. I want to thank the music teachers across from Brookings and Del Norte. The kids, they put on a great concert at the end of the week, and very, very informative, or very, very enjoyable. Received several constituent complaints regarding trucks and trailers parked on the side of the road between Monument Drive and the road to Slant Bridge. And we've had code enforcement go out and talk and inform the people that is not a campground certified area. So from what I understand, those items will be removed from there. But it is it's a concern, especially when you're dealing with what's happening with the waste that's being generated there. Attended the Forest Service meeting right after we got back from San Diego. Or Del Mar. We went to the Forest Service open house. It is disturbing that they did not hold a meeting in Crescent City. They held one out in Gasky. I think we would prefer that more people get involved and more public input. It's extremely ironic that now the Forest Service is resorting, it's no longer the travel management plan, it's the travel management and restoration plan. Now when I hear restoring a road, I think of repairing it to a functional status. Restoring the road now, and the verbiage they're using, restoration means getting rid of the road. So it's disturbing that now we're using different language, and I think it's done to confuse the issue. Earlier this week, or last week, attended the Rowdy Creek Fish Hatchery, and the fish hatchery has gotten to a point where they are, due to financial means, they have developed a unique relationship with Smith River Rancheria. The Rancheria serves on the board, and it's an example of a great partnership going forward that will keep that hatchery open. We hope going forward on that. There also is going to be an event, I think the weekend of February 20th through the 22nd, in terms of a public event that people can attend to contribute to it. They are sending out solicitations right now, donations-wise, to keep that going. It's a great program. It's been in existence a long time. Each of the supervisors up here have had an opportunity to see the operation up there. We'd like that to continue, and I appreciate Smith River Rancheria stepping up and getting involved in that. Also, and I appreciate the individuals involved in the Last Chance Grade and the involvement. I would strongly encourage you, especially to have the power, the sanctity of the board to use the local transportation commission group to address Last Chance Grade. If there's too many groups going out there and there's confusion, right now the only group that really has authority to deal with Last Chance on the behalf of the board anyway is the local transportation commission. So unless this board forms a separate committee and the board takes action and forms it, it's not speaking on behalf of the Board of Supervisors. So I would encourage, I know we've got people with good experience out there. I know we're reaching out right now, as I said earlier, to find people with knowledge of the roads there. I would strongly encourage it. We have a funded organization that is pushing that issue. So, and then the other issue, Supervisor McClure brought it up. We can list that. I think Supervisor Finigan, I'd ask for some clarification also on something you brought up, but I do think it's ironic water quality will go after the farmers and the bulb growers and everyone else for for water issues they perceive out there, but they won't go after someone that is actually harming the environment, and there are. Well, it just doesn't make sense to me. They're picking and choosing who they're going to enforce the law with. The law is the law, and that's how it goes. But Supervisor Finigan, if you could clarify the prisoner release thing, because I thought the governor was opposed to releasing the prisoners.
He is, and he's made a commitment that he's not going to until he exhausts all remedies through the Supreme Court. The next argument is going to be the arbitrary number of 135.5%. It was just they split the baby down the middle. There's no science on it whatsoever. They're discounting all the good work that's been done with AB 109 as well as the plan that he has. First of all, I was one of 5 in the room, one of 4 of the people with the governor, when we got his commitment and what his plan is and what we will be developing going forward. Some of the things that he has looked at and proposed to the Supreme Court and to the 3-judge panel starts with some sentencing credits. It starts with contracting it with out of state. It starts with contracting with local jails that have capacity. There's just a myriad of issues. If there does have to come a release, it won't be of those hardened felons. It will be of the guy who is sick and is a senior that poses no threat. People like that. Also, you get released. If you do get released, you go back to, it'll be state parole, and it'll be to the county where you offended. So Pelican Bay just doesn't unload here, and the people from Pelican Bay come to Delaware County. I could get you the list of the 5 things that he was going to do and what he was going to look at. New construction was one of them. There's a lot of things on the table, but one thing that he has emphatically stated, that he is not going to be releasing criminals into the counties of California that belong in jail, period.
Okay.
And
yeah,
you'll be the first to know because I'm in the room.
Okay. Yeah, if you could actually get us just those 5 items, just email
Sure.
to it, that'd be great. Or get it to Jay and have him get it out to us. Okay, so we have a timed item which we've blown past. So I'll go right. We're going to go to public comment. Members of the public may address the board on matters which are within the jurisdiction of the board. If you're addressing the board regarding a matter listed on the agenda, you may be asked to hold your comments until the board takes up that matter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. And there is a sign-up sheet. Could I get a show of hands just how many people plan on speaking? Okay, so don't worry about the sign-up sheet. Just come on up. Come on, Chuck.
It's a pleasure to be in this position rather than up there. And I admire all of you for the jobs you do for this community. I certainly look back and thank the good Lord for you and me the same opportunity you guys have right now. I'm just here as a citizen, although I think that Roger mentioned about a field trip that we took, that Kirk Strenberg, who I do not believe is here, that we took with Green Diamond Resources. If I might, can I give you just a short history of why I even am here, or why I'm even interested in this? As I grew up in this community, I had the pleasure of picking up 2 old gentlemen for 30 years, Ed Hughes and Jack Sweet Husberg, that I guided with for 30 years in Klamath. They both were gentlemen that taught me a lot and gave me a lot of historical information in this county. Ed Hughes worked in 1930-31 on the original 101 project, driving a Sterling truck. And in the discussions about the construction of that highway, he also shared with me many years ago that when that highway was surveyed, it was not just surveyed at last chance, it was surveyed on the backside of the mountain, which is exactly all of you that are working politically now on this realize that is an alternative, and it's a good alternative. I think we, over the years, through all of the folks that lived here a long time, I think most of us fully understand it's not when that mountain will finally give way, but it is going to give away at some point. And as we've watched the millions, and I think you have the figures, and I've gotten hold of some of those figures too, the tremendous amount of money of a fix there. The last fix, finished a little over a year ago, was a complete failure. And already they're pumping additional millions into that, trying to stabilize it. With my geologic background back in college with my father's upbringing, I fully understand the dynamics of pounding in the mountains, drilling in the mountains, and intruding on the integrity of rock. And I truly believe that over the years, and I would think that Caltrans would understand this too, that they're destroying that mountain and its integrity. And as we fly in every time over United Express, we can get a good picture of what that mountain looks like and how fragile that mountain really is. I'm hoping, I'm looking at it from a community side, from a private side. So was Kirk's. Kirk lost his parents in '72, and that was right during JC's tournament of 1972. And that mountain gave away, and down they went. And Kirk's been a part of this for years, and so have I. I worked with Dave Finigan when I was on the board, particularly with National State Parks. And these people have to change their attitude. This is a community, a dire community emergency with transportation and well-being and economy in this community. And if we don't face it, and we don't come up with an alternative, then we are going to be faced with a disaster. I think that's the bottom line. I had a great field trip with Roger and with Kirk and Andy and Ruth Ann from Green Diamond were great hosts. But I'll tell you, as we all looked at the GPS map as we were going up the M200 road, and we got within what Andy thought was a quarter mile to no more than a half a mile to the actual 101, not through State Park, but just the actual 101, just south of Damnation Creek or right in that area. It enlightened all of us, I think, somewhat to know that there might be a lot simpler solution. I also asked him, how far do you think it is from here down to Wilson Creek as you cross the bridge at Wilson Creek, undoubtedly starting north of that bridge? He said, I don't think more than 3 or 3.5 miles, and I think he was totally correct. So we're not looking at something major, because back in Dave's and our time, we were looking at coming back in south of Mill Creek or in that area, and that's a lot longer road. But I know you're on it politically. We're going to try to get the community involved and educated on that situation up there and try to assist from the community side. I hope you'll appreciate what we're trying to do to work with you in your methods of trying to solve this problem. I want to thank you all. Roger, I want to thank you for including us in that field trip with those folks. And I truly believe in my relationship with Green Diamond, and they gave me a hat too, that I truly believe that
Chuck,
if it really comes down to it, Green Diamond will join us as a partner.
Well, and Chuck, I would encourage you, Kurt, to actually go to the local Transportation Commission meeting, because I know Tamara is a big reason we had success on 189, and I know her focus now is getting on Last Chance. So anyway, thank you, Chuck.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next speaker, Catherine.
Just while you're waiting, I'm going to chime in that I gave a booklet, a binder of alternative routes for 101 that was part of a value analysis that I participated in 2003 when I was on the deal committee in El Tico, and I gave it to Gerry. Gerry has it there, and the work's been done. So we're not going to reinvent the wheel, but good job.
Catherine.
Catherine Murray from the city. I wanted to especially thank Chair Sullivan for giving Tamara Layton a lot of the credit, because she's brought millions and millions and millions of dollars into this community to keep our roads safe, and she's done a terrific job. Chair McClure, I wanted to suggest when you send that letter to the Water Regional Control Board that you send copies to Governor Brown, West Chesborough, Nielsen, the Fish and Wildlife, Friends of Del Norte, and EPIC, because it's a critical issue that our creeks are being polluted, and so we need to put the pressure on them every way we possibly can. And lastly, I wanted to state that there was an inaccuracy with Chair Finigan stating that the reason tri-agency failed was because of receiverships. We had done one receivership long before tri-agency failed, and the last receiverships we're doing, tri-agency's already gone under, so I don't believe it's the city's fault.
Since you brought it up, just a point of clarification, it was the last cash flow the tri-agency had that the receivership took away.
I believe you're inaccurate.
Okay. Next speaker. Okay, you next, Vicki. Eileen?
Eileen Cooper. I noticed in the paper that the Westlands agricultural community from the South has now sued the federal government because they are restricting water use so that we don't have another giant fish kill on the Klamath River, because conditions are similar to the last time that we had a giant fish kill with a large run expected and drought conditions. So I don't know if it's possible for you to become some kind of friend of the court or write a letter to the powers that be that speak out to the values of this community and how important keeping the Klamath River flowing for the fish is to us. But I would sure hope that you would take every opportunity to do that and support the difficult decision that the feds have made in protecting our fish. And I also do need to get more active attention to the harm of our waters from these illegal developments that are draining and polluting and poisoning sensitive species. So I appreciate your action on that, and we need to do our share. So, of course, another frightening perspective on the horizon is the one little piece of the Smith River that is not protected is in Oregon, and we're faced with one of the most important salmon spawning areas on the North Fork, the prospect of extensive nickel mining. That's a horrific monster coming our way that we thought, wouldn't be back. So just, that's in our district because it's our river mostly, and they're taking actions in that forest service that threaten it. So I've put that on your radar screen, please. And then I will save my comments about most of my comments about the OHV situation, but just as a participant throughout this process, sitting at the table all summer long with supervisors and all, and we came very close to an agreement. I have to tell you that I find these documents that they've produced to be very reflective of that process. It wasn't a surprise to me at all. They took pieces of what was important from those negotiations to the environmental community, and they added more parking and mixed use and things that the OHV community wanted, and they put them together. So I don't think that the new plans are different than what we negotiated.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Vicki.
Victoria Dickey from the county. I came down with two thoughts in mind. I thought I'd be out of here by 10:20. First off, I brought to the attention of the community the fact that there had been rude behavior at this board meeting not too awfully long ago. Since then, there was an apology issued. I want to say how much I respect people who can stand up and say, hey, you know, I had a bad hair day, even if you didn't have hair. And I just wanted to say how much I respect people who stand up and say, look, I made a mistake. It goes a long way. To me, it shows a lot of character. Wanted that cleared up. Second thing, Mr. Gitlin, Supervisor Gitlin, helped a cleanup of a mattress that happened to be on a property that was one of my tenants, and he needed help. And wow, it's those little things that people do for one another that measure what a community is. That was such a big help to him. I respect that. I appreciate it. While I was sitting here, I was thinking about a couple of other things as everyone was speaking. One is you're getting bullied a lot by the state of California. I have stated it before, and I am serious about the potential of mentioning to them that there are other people courting us, like the state of Jefferson. If you're going to get cut off so you don't have a road to come in here, and we don't have any help from them for anything, I've heard in the past, oh, we can't split out from the state because we get more than we give. Well, you know, they regulate us to the point that they have to give us stuff. I mean, if you take a man's livelihood away from him, then I guess you get stuck with feeding him. Well, that's what's happened here, I think. State of Jefferson is something for us to look at, you know. That's one. The gun safety course, I went to that. Part of it is because I'm thinking, you know, they're going to close that prison down a little bit, and I have bear and deer and things like that, elk all over the place. Might be a good time. That gun safety course was incredible. And since they don't enforce the waterway pollutions because those people are armed, well, maybe if everybody up here got armed, this, you know, that might have an effect. Sorry, what a thought. Other quickie, we had a big drug bust out by where I live. It was huge. Of course, the former DA didn't do anything about it, and then the current interim one dropped it because, well, the law's murky. What that says to people who are in drugs is, okay, we're not going to enforce it on the creeks. We're not going to enforce drugs that have been, I mean, we had a barn full. And there's going to be nothing done because the law's murky. Well, it's not that murky. It is a federal offense to be dealing with marijuana. More and more of that is in this community, and we need to take a stand. I think the first stand we need to take is to put a district attorney in there who is not afraid to enforce the law. I'm not happy with the person who's there now. I tried to get in touch with her, but my schedule didn't allow it. I've been over my 3 minutes. I do appreciate you and what you do, and I think you're doing the best that you know how to do or have time to. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. Any other public comment? Yeah. Okay.
Linda Sutter County. I only have a wish list, and my wish list is that I drive quite frequently on the 199. And the roads, after this winter, I have no doubt that they're starting to break up, and especially around those sharp curves. And even when you're doing 25, the speed limit, to go around the curve, if your tire catches that break in the road, in a lot of places, it scoots you. And so when it becomes wet, it's going to be a real hazard. I don't know if there's any money to have our roads on 199 repaved up to the tunnel, but it seriously needs it. Thank you.
Well, and it can be brought to, actually, we don't own or maintain the state highway system. We can bring it to Caltrans' attention because it is Caltrans' job to, they're the owner and the operator of the state highways.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but they are in the county, and you are my supervisors.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, I'm going to come back to CEO Jay Serena's report, which I inadvertently skipped over. So come back because he's going to wow us.
I'll make it quick. Most of our focus for the last several months has been the budget development, and we're getting very close to September, which is the deadline for the final budget, and I believe we're getting quite a bit closer now with the end of the fiscal year and closeout. So we'll be bringing forward some information at the next meeting, preparing for the final push towards the final budget at the end of September. This last week there was a walkthrough at 700 Fifth Street with two consultants regarding the abatement of hazardous materials at 700 Fifth Street. The RFP will close this week, and we'll understand at that point what that cost would be. We've been in employee negotiations now off and on over the last several weeks. We've been in negotiations for several months with a couple of groups, and those will continue on, doing some review regarding energy projects with both an outside consultant as well as with PAC Power. Miscellaneous issues that come up on a day-to-day basis through administration, through different departments. Personnel issues also that have come up. And just this recent weekend, actually Sunday morning, the road department assisted in the placement of the boat docks at the Roy Rook ramp, and they will also be assisting with taking those out. The nonprofit that was our partner on that, due to the economic conditions, is no longer viable, and they did the primary work on that, but I want to thank the road department. Jeff Daniels sent down two of the road workers, Martin Luttrell and Kyle Hampson, and they spent their Sunday morning observing and helping. So they'll be doing that work in the future, and we'll have to find ways to compensate the road fund for that.
I see Jeff shaking his head in the background already there.
It's more work for them, but they are the ones that are capable of doing it. They have the larger equipment or the staff. So did meet with the board members regarding the 2x2s that were noticed earlier, and we'll be continuing on dealing with some of the issues that may come out of those and meeting with staff. Okay.
Thank you. We're going to go to consent agenda, just because I know we've got folks here on one of the proclamations, and I'll entertain a motion to, I'm going to close public comment, which I actually did before Jay, and at this point I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment on consent agenda items only? Better hurry if you're going to come and speak consent agenda. This is not the airport. This is
Point in time when we asked to pull certain items?
You don't ask.
You just comment. There's not a Q&A on it. So if you have a public comment on items 1 through 13, any of those items?
I did want to have some of those pulled and have a chance to comment on them.
You don't have that opportunity. Only a supervisor can pull it from the agenda.
Oh, I mean...
So you can comment on it. You do have the ability to comment on it.
Yeah.
Can you start
okay.
for 3 minutes, please?
All right. So this is be the time to comment then. And you're not going to announce which ones you're pulling?
We're not pulling any.
You're not pulling any. Okay. So I would like the item 12 to comment on, first of all, and then do I get 3 minutes for each item?
You're in 3 minutes right now.
For each one?
No,
Oh,
it's
okay.
consent agenda. You get to speak one time for 3 minutes on consent agenda
Okay.
items.
All right. So I think the Forest Service 300-foot buffer is unreasonable, unworkable, because we're engaged in a process that allows access based on specific evaluations of roads and and that there are, biological resources of sensitivity and wetland resources of sensitivity, within those areas. One size doesn't fit all. You can't just go, hey, 300 feet everywhere. It doesn't make any sense when we're going through such a detailed plan evaluating resource risk. It doesn't make sense at this point in time to do that. It's I highly recommend that you cancel that letter. And the sea level rise issue, number 11, I think that's needed. I see that we put our sewage treatment plant in risk of tsunami inundation. We put UREC housing for low income in risk of inundation, high risk areas, and maybe we wouldn't have done that way if we had thought a little bit more about this. So I highly recommend that. And the item 13, I would hope that you would hold off on that until after we see the airport presentation, because the maps illustrating what might happen or more information for the public is just, you can't make out anything on the internet, and I'd like to understand a little bit more about that before you ask for this, but it makes sense process-wise, though. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on consent agenda items only? Okay, seeing no other public comment, I will close that. I'll bring it back to the board.
Just the only comment I had was regarding number 6. I don't want to pull it. It has to do with responding to the grand jury. The grand jury thought that I should respond regarding Klamath Fire. Would it be appropriate for the board to respond instead?
Yes, there was a section in there that didn't require a response, but it had a recommendation that after speaking with you as the supervisor in that district, the Board of Supervisors essentially step in and take over the district, which have run through county council as to what that process would be. And for clarification to the public, the Board of Supervisors cannot just step in and take over a duly elected board, which is what that special purpose district is.
Right. I just wondered if you could include that in the response.
That could be added.
Okay.
I can put
and then the only other thing I want to do is, in their response regarding the city, what they thought, the city-county relationships, they thought it was a great idea to have the MOU. Hopefully we can bring that back. The city will agree to join us again. And also the 2x2s, which we instigated, they commended us on. So it sounds like we're doing some good work there.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Yeah.
Just a note, that was a very open process, and I had a lot of meetings with the grand jury, as well as some of our staff people met, and very positive towards both recreation and emergency services, which include so many other partners, including the city in that too.
Okay. Okay, any other comments, questions to supervisors? Okay, at this point, Tony, could you please pull the vote?
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingsen?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Finigan?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes, and in that list of items, item number 7 is a approve and adopt a proclamation honoring the 13th annual Binational Health Week to take place the week of October 12th through the 21st of 2013. And Supervisor Gitlin has the proclamation. Go ahead and read that, please.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. Whereas the Secretariats of Health and Foreign Affairs of Mexico, the Ministries of Foreign Affairs of Guatemala, Honduras, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, the Institute of Mexicans Abroad, the Mexicans Social Security Institute, the United States Mexican Border Health Commission, and the Health Initiative of the Americas, a program of the University of California, Berkeley School of Public Health, have recognized the necessity of improving access to health services for the underserved Latino population in the United States of America. And whereas, according to the 2006 United States Census, the country is home to more than 44.5 million people of Latino origin, and whereas improving the health and mobile populations requires multiple approaches in service design, delivery, funding priorities, and most fundamentally requires strong binational commitment. And whereas in October 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, and 12 through those years, the Health Institute initiative of the Americas and partnering organizations convened the first of 8 binational health weeks, an unprecedented effort overseen by a multi-agency task force which conducted health promotion and education activities for the underserved Latino population in the United States, and over 1 million people benefit from the health care activities. And whereas Binational Health Week reflects coordinated efforts between the United States, Mexico, Canada, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru to improve the quality of life of underserved populations by extending their access to health care, increasing their health insurance coverage, and reducing the unmet health needs. And whereas the Health Initiative of the Americas and the Consular Network of the United States of America, Guatemala, Honduras, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru are coordinating the 9th annual Binational Health Week, and activities throughout the country will be centered in the regions with a high level of community health needs. And whereas Del Norte County acknowledges the many organizations and volunteers collaborating in the organization of health fairs and educational health workshops, and whereas Binational Health West provides an opportunity to highlight critical health issues in Del Norte County and throughout the United States, and will serve as the basis for future bilateral efforts. And whereas Del Norte County is committed to recognizing and honoring those observances and are dedicated to the best ideals of public services, and Binational Health Week is one such worthy observance. Now, therefore, it be proclaimed by the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors in honor of those efforts to improve the public health. The week of October 12th through 21st, 2013 is declared the 13th Binational Health Week throughout Del Norte County, and it's dated this 13th day of August, 2013.
Thank you. And we have representatives here to accept the proclamation. Come on up. Wait, you can come down this way. There's no one-way traffic, so to speak, so it goes both ways. So.
I want to thank you for this. Del Norte County, of course, is always, number one in everything, right? So this is going to Washington, D.C., and it's going also to, it's going to the opening in Washington, D.C., and then it's going to the closing in Mexico. And the really nice thing and particular thing about Del Norte County is that even though, this is for the Latino population, because we're so diverse in Del Norte County, we include everybody. So we're all inclusive, and so it's really exciting that we have a bunch of organizations, working together with this. We have Department of Health and Social Services, the Child Care Council, First Five, the school district, the California Endowment, the Smith River Rancheria, just Center Coast Hospital, just a numerous amount of people working with us together to serve, the population that is unserved, underserved, and the Hmong population. We're going to have a wonderful time. We're going to have a lot of health-related activities, so please come and join us.
Thank you, Hilda. You guys do a great job, and it's very badly needed, so we definitely appreciate the work you all do, and thanks for sitting through a couple hours of the meeting, too. Yeah, Supervisor McClure.
Yeah, I want to thank you also, because so much of your work is quiet, and it just reaches families and kids, and then all of a sudden there's a family that the third child is okay now, and everybody's at school, and it's a thing that comes from your heart and soul, but the quietness of how far you reach is through every corner of our community, and I want to thank you for your hard work.
Ditto, thanks, and thank you for inviting us to participate in this proclamation, so thank you.
Good job.
Okay, we are going to take a 3-minute recess, and we will come back and we're going to deal with the airport at that point. We are going to go very quickly. I am going to entertain a motion on the 2 budget transfers that are in there, and then we'll go into the other timed item. I'll entertain a motion to accept.
So moved on 4. Are we doing individually, Chair?
No, you can do them combined.
So moved on. I'd like to make the motion on 15 first. This is $342,342 reimbursed for AB 109 as requested by the Assistant Chief.
You can take both items together.
Okay, then I will make the motion for both items to approve budget transfer 622 for $19,658 requested by Building Maintenance Parks, and item 15, which is budget transfer 623 in the amount of $342,342 for reimbursement on 109.
It's moved and second. Any public comment on the budget transfers? How did we get 342? What is the? Did you guys round up or round down just to get to 342?
It is a coincidence. Yes.
Wow.
There was, just to kind of reiterate on that one, there was a lot of work back and forth by the budget team in conjunction with the Chief Probation Officer and trying to offset the eligible costs at the jail, and we see that as a very successful step in getting there.
Okay. Tony, could you please pull the vote? Oh, yeah.
Before you do, I want to weigh in on that 342. It might have been successful from the point of budgeting, and I understand that, and I'll vote for it this time, but that is wrong. Okay, $342,000 coming out of probation that should have been implemented for programs and services through the community correction plans to reduce recidivism is what that was supposed to go for, not to supplement the jail. End of story. I don't want to see it again.
May I?
Yes.
I understand what Supervisor Finigan's saying, and I agree with him, and there's going to be a transition period in trying to get to the point where they can staff up correctly. They had some issues internally with the number of staff, and I believe we'll be successful in getting that done. That is the goal overall. But right now, through that transition period, there is a lot of eligible costs on the other side. So that was the success, was trying to balance that out.
Okay, thank you. Unless there's any other comments from board members, I am going to go to have Tony pull the vote, please.
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Supervisor Finigan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingsen?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes. Okay, those budget transfers have been moved and passed. We're going to item 17, which was a 10:30 timed item, and we have our airport director here as well as the consultant. It's a presentation and update on the Board of Coast Regional Airport. I'd asked for that due in fact because when Supervisor Finigan and I were in D.C. and we had a meeting with the FAA, we were told everything needed to be in place by the end of this month. Otherwise, we are losing out on this fiscal year of funds. And we were also told at that point, next fiscal year for the runway safety area, we were going to compete against Oakland and San Francisco. So that's, anyway, Jim, if you could kind of give us an update.
Good afternoon. I don't have a presentation, but just showed up to answer a question. And first of all, we are already competing with San Francisco and Oakland as they are currently underway on their RSAs. And whatever money we don't spend, they'd be more than happy to suck up. Just as a side note, the Asiana crash in San Francisco came 90 days after they finished the RSA on that runway. So it did its job. A brief update on ours. We did miss the FAA grant deadline for this year only, and I wanted to correct Supervisor Gitland. It doesn't mean we're dead. It's just one of several grant cycles that we missed. The project is still alive, but delayed, but not out of the water. We'll be applying again at the beginning of the fiscal year, which is October, instead of the end of last year, which was the August deadline. And I would say that the reason we got bumped off of August was the commission staff felt that they needed more time to do a thorough review to assure that it passed. at the commission level, because if it didn't, it would be a 3-month delay at least before it came back and resulted in further delays. I would add that unlike the terminal building appeal of a couple of years ago, Coastal has been intimately involved with this project and showing up on a monthly basis to have meetings with all the various agencies and to work out the details, so they are fully engaged in working through the complexity of this problem. It's a bit like herding cats, trying to get 6 different agencies all on the same page, all with their separate agendas, and we miss August.
So, Jim, where are we at exactly,
Okay.
and what is the holdup as to where we go forward?
Well, we made the, we would have made the agenda for original plan of Back Shores, but the lawsuit that has ensued resulted in the need to look elsewhere for other feasible properties. And that's what tied us up here the last couple of months as the board was pursuing other feasible options, with originally the idea that the lawsuit would go away if we left Pack Shores, but then they sued us anyway, so it didn't go away before we could find the feasible options available other than Pack Shores. Now, when we first started looking for other lots, we were still looking for 68 acres, a 4-to-1 creation of wetlands. And since that time, coastal staff has recommended support of a 1-to-1 ratio, which is a significant move towards us finding the necessary acreage, albeit on private land, that landowners would sell to us, which is the same scenario we had back Pack Shores. All along, we've been just looking for willing sellers and not taking anything away from people. The 1-to-1 ratio support from coastal staff, as I mentioned, is a major move and one that makes it much more doable. Now, what we'll have to do is get to the commission and get a coastal development permit with conditions, and then spend the winter satisfying those conditions so that come the spring we have CDP issued, and then we're back on schedule as we were before. The only caveat is the FAA is not going to pay for the work through the winter, so we have to find another source of being paid for that work.
So how much is that going to run?
Would probably be about, I'm guessing, 500.
500,000.
Yes, yes, and that's just to develop Bay Meadows, which would satisfy what is believed to be a 2-to-1 ratio by the Corps. Now, with a lot of attention has been paid to the CDP, but we have other permits that are pending as well. One is with Army Corps, and one is with Regional Water, who tends to follow Army Corps. And they wanted us to redesign the runway plan as an alternative. And we started to do some work on that, and the FAA stepped in and said, no, don't do any more. We're going with the original plan, and therefore we suspended our work on the redesign, although it took the FAA 2 months to put together a letter telling Army Corps no. They are meeting today, right now, in San Francisco, the FAA and the Army Corps management to work this out, and that should result in some agreement. I don't know what it will be as of yet, but that's one of the permits that we needed by the end of the month, which, given their reluctance to issue, was it going to happen?
So it's not just the coastal, we're also missing the Army
Well, so we
Corps.
have the Corps, and to be followed by the Regional Water Board. The Congressman has been involved on a cursory level. He's been calling agencies and indicating his support. That's Congressman Hoffman and Wesley Jesbro as well. If we get the work done this fall, basically the FAA is awaiting further funding based on the probable outcome of the court case, and that they don't want to redesign any part of it. So right now, that's what we're proceeding with, is to get it some kind of judgment as quickly as possible, which will then possibly free up the grant money. But until then, I don't think they're inclined to give us much.
Supervisor Gitlin.
Yeah, well, Jim, first of all, thank you for your report. You know, there are a number of things that disturb me on this. In my conversation with Mr. Merrill at North Coast, as the director of the Coastal Commission North District, his answer to me was, why, and I'm not one who believes in coincidences, why is this going to be agendized at the September 11th to 13th Eureka meeting when it could have been agendized sooner? What's happened in this interim period? I wasn't getting a satisfactory answer other than Supervisor Gitlin, it's very complicated. But I find it very curious that it comes up after the hard deadline of August 31st, which is in no way, shape, form, in my limited experience with government, our deadlines extend it. I mean, I'm not expecting the FAA to approve, give us 30 days more. Now, if nothing else, it's another delay. And since my since my election and my service on this Board of Supervisors, every month I hear it's going to be on the agenda from February on. I can remember every February, March, April, May, all the way here. The absolute deadline is August 31st, yet it doesn't appear. And suddenly it appears September 11th to 13th after the fact. And it is disturbing. I'm hearing it's a $14 million project. Is it 11 or 14 million?
Could be closer to 15.
Okay, so you're talking about scores of jobs, a real economic boost to our community, and I'm outraged that it's not on this cycle. And we're now going to have to deal with a whole new process, a whole new set of bureaucracy, whole new funding with FAA. There's so many pitfalls ahead of us now because we couldn't get this on sooner. And any member of the public would be frustrated to the point of, why is this happening? There is culpability here, and we're going to get to the bottom of this, and we're going to find out why this was not on the August agenda, and suddenly it appears on the September agenda. And I promise you, Mr. Bernard, we'll find the bottom of this answer.
Supervisor, go ahead. Supervisor Hemmingsen. Oh, I'm sorry, Jim. I cut you off. Sorry.
I can appreciate your frustration, but the entire process has been a very tedious task at best. And as our board members know, the BACRA board, we have had numerous problems along the way. And when they do appear, we have little choice but to work through them one at a time. And eventually we'll get there. And much the same with getting on the Coastal Commission agenda. I feel like we're there now with adequate time for it to be recommended for approval, and that's basically what we need, is no more delays and no go back and do it again and fill in the blanks. We have to get approval when it goes.
And you are anticipating that approval according to, and
Yes.
Mr. Merrill said the same thing, it will be on for the September agenda. He said that, those were his words, and then the conditions he wouldn't elaborate on, but at least it'll be an agendized item, and then we'll get an up or down vote on it.
We haven't seen, nor are we likely to see the conditions, but we will have we are expecting it to be on the commission's agenda with a recommendation to approve.
Supervisor Hemmingsen.
Yeah, Jim, just a couple of things. You alluded to the fact that we need another $500,000. Is that reimbursable?
Yes.
But we have to come up with the money first.
Right.
The other thing was I was a little disappointed. You sent me some information last night, I think, after hours. I think it was 6 o'clock or so. I didn't get back to you, but I was a little disappointed in the, and I just had a chance to skim over it, so if I missed something or if I'm misstating something, I apologize. But they went back to this, to these 16 items, I think, originally. They said that, you know, we've asked for this stuff and we haven't gotten it, we haven't gotten it, we haven't gotten it. And then, so then they show all the documentation, and the list of stuff that they're looking for now is not anything that was on that list previous. And it seemed to be fairly, well, it just seemed to be not very important information, like who owns property within 100 feet of the proposed action. I mean, that seems pretty simplistic to me, that they're choosing that to decline us from being on the agenda. Is that what it came down to?
Well, I guess so. Yes, we're down to stamped envelopes and mailings, which seem insignificant compared to all the volumes of science that we've already created.
Yeah.
But it still has to happen.
Well, I understand they need the information, but that seemed like a stretch to me, that they keep pouncing on these items that, you know, that hadn't been taken care of, but which evidently have been taken care of, and now they've got another list.
Well, some of the items we can address, and some of the items, like the EPA, is out of our
Right.
hands. So we're just waiting for the FAA to have their meeting today.
Supervisor Finigan?
Yeah, frustration is a mild term for anybody who was at that meeting, last JPA meeting. My emotions on this. It's like a moving target. It's almost like a, you know, don't blame me. You know, I thought I was in a rerun of Rocket Man. Wasn't me, you know. Trying to push the culpability is a word that Supervisor Gitlin likes to use onto somebody else. I've been down this road with the Coastal Commission, and the same interests that tried to stop 299, that tried to stop the terminal project, that had us had to agree to putting a parking lot in the least desirable place in the weather. But, you know, when it all came down to it, we had to agree to frog tunnels, which has absolutely no science attached to it. But we got the coastal development permit. And this is the same kind of crap that they have put us through for the last 4 years on the RSA. Frustrating, but knowing that we have to, this is an agency that I know when Supervisor McClure asked for support to be put on that commission, she asked me if I was going to do it, and I said no, because I did not see the benefit of trying to serve on a commission that I think I would like to destroy. And I was blunt about it. I don't, you know, I think that after reviewing CDP or coastal development plans or the coastal plans, I think that the county staff, as long as they adhere to that plan, can do it, and they shouldn't keep getting bites and bites and bites and bites of the apples for community projects, especially one that is safety mandated by another federal agency. So I love the way some people show up and say, oh, we're supportive, but then they're also the ones that are most informed about the obstacles that are going to occur that we don't even know about yet. I'm tired of seeing that too. But I'm preaching to the choir here, to Misha and to Jim and to Gerry and Mike and Roger, but I just look forward to September. I now look forward to changing direction, shifting maybe some of the energies towards finding monies for the community to build the terminal, to fund the additional studies that are necessary for the RSA that we're going to have that is reimbursable. We we need to demonstrate to the community that we can build that terminal building, which the reason it isn't, I guess, to take a page out of your book, Jim, is because it's not a funding priority for FAA until the RSA is funded. So while we got the permit, they found another way to slow us down.
Well,
You know, unless we fund it ourselves, which I think it's about time we better start having that conversation too. So, upset? Yeah, I can go through this page and page and page of stuff, and I know there's people who are going to say, well, see, you didn't do this, or see, that guy did it, or that guy did it. They tried to throw a curve at us with the EPA through Army Corps, and it was something that we had done and received approval for 2 years prior.
Yep.
So who made the phone call that said, oh, they didn't do that? It wasn't true. So this is what we've been up against. You'd think our skins were a little thicker after going through this for so many years, but unfortunately it is the devil that we have to dance with in this case.
it hasn't been a tedious task, but I think it's still achievable. It just has a new twist.
We don't have a choice. We have to. It has to be achievable.
Yes. And on Chairman Sullivan's request, I brought Misha up from GHD to answer questions as well. Well, if you have any.
Any questions of the consultant? Supervisor McClure.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim. I, too, received the letter that was received last night, and it appears that the application may be at this time deemed complete if the additional information, and those are the final cleanup information, that's not anything new. I would think that the consultant would know, yes, that that's how it has to be turned in its final form, and that's standard operation in a CDP. I have over the week been accused of not putting this on the agenda, and I want to make reference to maybe some questions to you. That do you think that the primary reason for this delay was the need to look at the alternative mitigation sites that didn't come about until April 24th of 2013?
I do.
And that alternative mitigation site, it's my understanding that after a interagency meeting with GHD and the process, after the meeting, the agent informed the commission that they were going to probably be seeking additional mitigation sites. And up until that point, it's my understanding that the Coastal Commission didn't have a mitigation issue. It was your issue, and it was wrapped around, was it wrapped around the possibility of litigation?
Yes.
And were you informed that if they were to remove this, if they were to remove Pacific Shores as a mitigation site, there would be no litigation?
We were told that
And
initially, probably April.
Who would tell you that?
Their attorney
Their attorney.
Kelly
So
Smith
Kelly Smith said,
told
if
Nancy
you,
Diamond.
and so told the Border Coast Authority if they did this, there
That's
would
correct.
be no mitigation. I find that to be possibly a slippery slope, considering we are looking at a density change in the alternative mitigation site that could possibly have a build-out impact onto other sensitive habitat because you're taking what is already identified as maximum density that has been approved, that has water and sewer capacity or capability in the near future, and that by doing that, the question may arise, will that compromise potential wetland impacts in the future because you did away with what has actually been dedicated site development. So for me, I'm not sure you have dodged a litigation bullet at this point, but at least we have moved forward from there. But finding that as the April 24th change, it also appears that from back to 2008 and even back to the first meeting with the agent of the GHD, the staff and other agencies were saying that this timeline was very, very extreme, that it was going to be very difficult to meet. Yet at the same time, there were letters that were sent in March that weren't responded to until July 12th, when a letter was sent out of what was still missing in an incomplete application. The response wasn't made from GHD until July 12th, and I found that bothersome. At the same time, I don't find that that's pointing a finger of blame to anyone, but I think that there were circumstances throughout this entire thing. But I want to ask you if you understand that how a CDP application moves forward. What's the first requirement that it needs to be? It needs to be deemed complete.
By the executive director, I believe.
And
before it goes on the agenda.
And on August 4th, the Border Coast Authority was approving a mitigation option that was now submitted that would make that complete, correct?
True.
So until August 1st, the application wasn't deemed complete. And with the, are you aware of the dates of the Streamlined Permitting Act of California?
No.
That once, I'm sure the consultant must be very aware of the times of the Streamlined Permitting Act of California. And that is that once a application is deemed complete, there are almost 6 months before that the recipient agency could, if it desired, take that amount of time to review to make sure it's complete. Once deemed complete, a 180-day cycle kicks in. And I'm here to say that this Northern California Coastal Commission staff is saying we're not going to do any of that. We are going to try to work our hearts out to get this on the September agenda, providing this little bit of final information is made available, which is, to me, something that I'm asking, are you guys going to be able to do that?
Well, we're pedaling as fast as we can.
Because that needs to happen.
Is yes, but if I sit here all day, I'm not getting out envelopes.
Okay.
No,
you have a staff of one.
Supervisor Hemmingsen, and then I'll go get one after.
Well, I was, while Misha's here, I hate for him just to sit there and listen to us. He probably should get up and say something. But are we there, Misha? Are we? Should they deem our application complete? Are we missing something?
Good afternoon. I'm Misha Schwartz with GHD. So yes, we are very close to a complete application. So just a little bit of history on that is that we submitted all our scientific studies in late May, early June. And at that point, there was a few items missing, which were stamped envelopes and 8.5 by 11 black and white copies. And so we were very close at that point, and from a technical standpoint, we had a complete application minus a few of these items that were discussed in the March 22nd letter. We did not answer those items right away because we were furiously studying the alternative sites and developing feasibility studies that were given to the BCRI board in June and July. And after a review of those in July, we were able to finalize the mitigation monitoring plan, which Ms. McClure is correct that was approved and reviewed by the BCRI board on the 1st and immediately turned into the Coastal Commission on the 2nd. So we have 4 outstanding items. We have to give them thousands of envelopes to notify everybody within 100 feet of any development. We have to give them some information with regards to where our import soil is coming from. So Mr. Bernard and Van Neer are working on that. We need to give them an example of a purchase agreement, not the actual signed purchase agreements, of course, but an example. And then we're working today with Melissa and my staff to give her the figures she needs. All of our figures and engineering work is not done in 8.5 by 11. The programs don't work like that. It doesn't set up like that. GIS doesn't operate like that. CAD doesn't operate like that, so we're trying now to find out exactly what figures the commission wants, because we literally gave them probably 150 to 200 figures, and we're figuring exactly which ones they want to submit those. Trying to get that done by Wednesday. And so we hope by the end of the week or by Monday, we will have everything else they need, and they hope to finish the staff report on the 23rd, and there's a slip on that to the 29th if they need to slip a little farther as far as submission to the commission. Then we will be negotiating conditions, which we wanted to see early, but we've been told we probably will not see those early. We are also going to be submitting tomorrow or Thursday a written analysis of the mitigation ratios and the percent credit that we're asking to get for purchasing of property. There's been a lot of discussions, some of those which I was not privy to, but we've now written those out. They're being reviewed by the team and will be a big part of the conditions of the CDP, so we're trying to get a jump on trying to evaluate the conditions. We do have some concern because of some of the sites aren't studied. Pacific Shores was studied very thoroughly, and Bay Meadows was studied at the feasibility level. We do have concerns about special project conditions that may be problematic from an implementation or financial standpoint, and so we'll probably have to deal with those after they've been submitted to the commission, but then we'll have a time at the hearing in September to argue our case with regards to any changes in the condition language. So that's where we're at. So barring we don't get any additional requests for any other information, which could happen, the commission at this point has not approved our wetland mapping at the RSA. The Corps of Engineers has a very thorough program for that. So we're hoping that that won't come up, and we're down to envelopes and graphics. And so that's what we'll be working on over the next 6 working days.
Aren't you also doing the habitat impact maps with the ESHA at the new site?
So there's...
those haven't been done yet,
so,
but you're going to finish them?
Well, there's habitat mapping that's done for the RSA project. And there were some questions from Coastal Commission on that with regards to the impacts and the use of the borrow area, so we've clarified that. And we've sent them information Friday. We've sent them information to Coastal Monday. We're going to probably send more out today, so we're constantly, information's going back and forth and discussions are occurring. With regards to the mapping that's done on the Bay Meadows site, there is no habitat mapping on the Bay Meadows site. There's existing wetland delineations that were done by the owner. At Pacific Shores, there was very detailed habitat mapping done, and those are some of the figures that we're messing with, because I think there's 20 different colors, and we somehow need to convert that to black and white, and that's problematic. So we are still going through that checklist. I know there's some stuff that's low-hanging fruit and other stuff that may result in some discussions with the commission of what data we actually have.
Are you going to need to have the habitat mapping of the Bay Meadows site?
The mitigation monitoring plan was completed at the conceptual level, which included options 2 and 3, which was the second mitigation monitoring plan, and that discusses the variability of potential wetlands that may be mitigated out there, what's out there, land use, which you alluded to, and so that's been described in the MMP, and it's our understanding that that is sufficient for the commission because, again, we do not have the funds. FAA would not fund mapping that because that was a double effort over Pacific Shores, so we do not have habitat mapping.
Do you see that this possibility is going to be an amalgamation of the 3 options of the mitigation plan?
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to be left open by the commission as well as the Corps and the regional board. At this time, we don't know. As Mr. Bernard alluded to, the courts will make the decision, hopefully sooner rather than later. I think we hope to potentially go back to Pacific Shores and capitalize on the efforts and money that was invested there and see what we can get out of there and squeeze every last little acre, and including purchasing parcels and gaining credit for purchasing those parcels. And then what's left based on our mitigation ratio analysis and percent credit on purchasing, we would go to Bay Meadows. That is the preferred site from a feasibility standpoint, from an economic standpoint, and from the agency standpoint as well.
And do you think that the delay happened with the April 24th decision to need to look at additional mitigation sites?
Well, as I alluded to earlier, as of late May, early June, we had submitted all our technical studies, including our 50% design for Pacific Shores. And at that point, late April into May, we started refocusing and scoping what it would take to do some of the preliminary studies at Bay Meadows, which included some groundwater analysis, botanical surveys, some faunal surveys, and of course the feasibility studies that were completed in the MMP. So
did you go back and complete the 50% of Pack Shore and then complete 100% of the Bay Meadows, or are those both still kind of?
No, Pacific Shores is at 50% design right now, pretty high level of design. You can almost build it. What we have on paper now, we have not done design at Bay Meadows or more any other sites we looked at. We've done a preliminary feasibility analysis that looks at the ranges of acreages and the limitations and analysis on groundwater and hydrogeology. And we have the mitigation monitoring plan, which would be considered a conceptual design. So we're probably at 5 to 10% design on these alternative sites at this point.
But there should be a condition on the permit that would say, as agreed, when you have a mutually agreed upon design. So that is a standard, not a standard condition, but a special condition that could easily be appointed to this.
If
project.
we do not have that condition, I'd be highly surprised.
Yeah, you're going to have it. I mean, I'm sure it will be there.
Supervisor Gillen.
Well, first of all, Misha, nice to see you. We haven't had the chance to chat, of course, but I wish you good luck in this obstacle course you're negotiating with our California Coastal Commission. I'm glad to hear that Jim mentioned, because I had not heard that heretofore, that the ratio has been lowered from the unreasonable 4-to-1 down to 1-to-1. I want to remind everybody here that Del Norte County is down to 221 square miles total of taxable land. This is a county that's about 1,000 square miles, and 78% of it is government-owned, non-tax generating income. So we don't have much to give, and I'm disturbed when these ratios which are set up at 4-to-1. What are you going to do? How are we going to accomplish these goals? But I see here that there's a pattern here. And this is not our airport, it's just one of many issues. And I speak in terms of a cross-lateral issue of the California Coastal Commission dealing with our veterans and trying to get point of honor put up. It's been 8 years. They've tried to get a permit, and each time something else comes up. So I'm hoping there will not be more new conditions other than the 4 that have been mentioned here that will not come up after September. That seems to be a pattern. It's disturbing. If this continues to happen, I'm not sure we can meet an August 31st, 2014 or an August 31st, 2015 deadline, because this is a pattern of continually adding more and more and more issues, which when we solve them, we've got some more for you. So I'm hoping that this will not be the case. I'm hoping it is going to be just the 4 that you talked to, and then we will get our permit, and then we can move on and have our airport and have the prosperity that it brings, and enough of this obfuscation. That's the only thing I can call this delay, this deflection, preventing us from growing into the vibrant community we all know we can become.
Okay. Misha, I do appreciate you coming to the meeting. What is our new timeline on this airport? Because obviously we're not going to get the funding done in this fiscal year. I'd like to know what our new timeline is to get this airport with the runway safety area and the replacement of the terminal.
So I'll talk about the permits real quick and where we're at, and then I can let Mr. Bernard deal with the FAA funding. I'm not privy to that information. Okay. So, of course, we hope to have an NOI issued by the Coastal Commission in mid-September. And as Mr. Bernard alluded to, there'll be conditions on that, and one of them being design at Bay Meadows and additional information to be submitted that a lot of it that we'll probably all have to submit at that point. We expect those conditions, so we'll have that then. I did just speak with Dean Pratt at the regional board. Because of the alternative sites, he has put this project down in the past, but it is active again for him. And his public notice is about 95% done, so he needs to include some information on the MMP number 2, which has been sent to him as well. And we would hope that he could have his public notice out in the next few weeks, and that there's a 21-day notice for that for the 401 water quality certification, which I do have to correct Mr. Bernard. That actually comes first normally, and then that gets submitted to the Corps along with the NOI for the coastal consistency determination. So hopefully the 401 permit is 7 to 9 weeks out. We do have the 1,600 permits that I mentioned before from Fish and Game. We also have the biological opinion from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for Pacific Shores. We do not anticipate any federal organisms that we need to deal with at Bay Meadows. So that's going smoothly. So the last question then is the Corps of Engineers. As Mr. Bernard alluded to, they are meeting today with FAA and discussing alternatives and the fact that a redesign will not occur. And once that log jam is broken, then we'll be negotiating mitigation ratios with them. We've done the required CRAM analysis that they have asked for. That's currently being reviewed by the team and is going to be submitted in the next few days. And then we will work with the Corps to obtain that permit, which could be, we have a meeting with the regional board and the Corps on Thursday and myself to just internalize staff, because there's a lot of stuff happening at a higher level with the Corps, and I want to get back to the staff members and get them re-engaged. So hopefully the Corps permit comes in 3 months. And that means that you would have all your entitlements. The NOI is sufficient for funding, similar to your terminal. And then again, we'd be working on the conditions on the permits prior to, there'll probably be 2 levels of conditions. One condition level will be prior to actually constructing the RSA, and the other conditions will be prior to construction of the mitigation. So if we satisfy the RSA conditions, that means you go build your RSA, and then we'll be working on the mitigation sites and get those satisfied to implement that probably a year after the RSA is constructed.
Just for clarification's sake, because I don't want people to get real excited about the one-to-one mitigation, could you explain about the one-to-one wetland restoration mitigation and the 3-to-1 acquisition?
Right.
So will you explain that? Because I don't want the public to, yep, when the permit comes out and they see these other numbers, to go, what? We were told something different.
I think part of that is these are staff recommendations. That doesn't mean the commission will go along with that. And sometimes boards go sideways.
Jim, would you be more comfortable to sit?
Yeah, you can sit at the.
Why don't you sit down here?
But Misha, talk about that it's a 1-to-1 for restoration. And a 3-to-1 acquisition.
Yeah, correct. So my package, the package that we had all along was a package, knowing that to try and create 68 acres of wetlands to make them was going to be prohibitive from a financial standpoint and the land use standpoint. So we always had a package, and that package included preservation, enhancement, and then actual creation. And so, for many, many months, the commission was saying they wanted 4-to-1 on creation. And we were saying that's just not feasible. We don't have the land. The FAA is not going to fund that kind of effort. You're moving, loads of soil, and it's just very problematic. And so the package that we always had in the MMP back, I think even in probably, in March when we were working on the MMP, was that it was going to be a package. And that package would include all these items. And so in the meeting that Jim had with some of my colleagues, that the commission said, okay, well, the bare bone minimum we can go to on creation is 1-to-1 because there's no net loss. That's state and federal policy. And the maximum is 4-to-1, and give us a package, and we're going to start reducing the creation based on acquisition and preservation and enhancement. And so that's exactly the document that we're going to be submitting to them on Wednesday to show very defined what that package is going to be. And, at this point, we're not exactly sure exactly how many parcels we're going to buy at Pacific Shores, but it's going to be a formula. And once we know exactly what we're going to get and not get and how much we're going to do where, we plug it all into the formula, and then we get our answer. And I don't know if there's anything, Jim, you want to add on that?
I just wanted to stress once again that we have staff recommendations, not commission. We still have to get the commission. And I would add that San Rosa also had to do part of their mitigation themselves because the FAA would pay for it. So, and they got reimbursed after they completed their studies. And part of the FAA review right off the bat was a full accounting of the grant money spent so far. And we came to that with flank hours. So one, that we had spent it properly, and the numbers worked out.
So my question, timeline. What are we talking about, the new timeline?
We're redoing the timeline even as we speak, and I can provide you with the latest on the RSA. It doesn't change much.
Well, and not just the RSA, the terminal, because I think this is what kicked everything off, is we wanted to replace the terminal because the FAA was unwilling to remodel it. So when does that?
The only new timeline I have is for the RSA.
Can I give you an easier question? The next time we fly to San Diego, will we be able to get there on time?
Yes. Yes, because you leave here at 5:30.
Depends on San Francisco.
I appreciate you guys coming to do it, and I hope you actually will come back to inform the board after the September meeting when we hopefully have that permit. And I'm hoping the commission will be more lenient than staff has been in terms of mitigation. That is a big crux. However, in this also, this airport is one of the top 5 projects in the county. We have to have that airport. It's not a question of whether or not we have to have it. So it is a key part. It is the A and has199.com. And it's unfortunate. I think it's been pushed back at least a year, it sounds like, just from the funding side of the stuff.
Hopefully not. Hopefully we'll be looking at grant funding in the spring for construction.
Jim, just for clarification, I know a lot of numbers have been thrown out. What was the grant funding we were seeking had we made the August?
Initially, I was looking for $2 million extra dollars to develop all of the signs for the alternative sites.
Okay.
And that got turned down before the agenda got changed. They said no.
Okay.
So they'll wait and see what happens with the litigation.
All right, Jim, we'll wait to hear back from you unless Supervisor have any other question. New flight schedule, by the way. I guess we have a new flight schedule for the airport.
Starts at the end of August, and it'll be 5:30 departure to San Francisco, which should get you there on time.
So right, yeah.
You mean there's not going to be a 240 anymore?
I'm not sure what the rest of the day looks like yet, but there'll be a 5:30 a.m. departure, or thereabouts, and then 11 o'clock arrival that'll stay overnight.
11 p.m.
So that could be 42 hours that we might
Yeah, we might be spending the night for 2 nights in the San Francisco airport. I do think one of the advantages with the scheduled change is the fact that the plane is going to spend the night on the tarmac here, so that flight out will happen.
Right.
Well, and it comes in late, so you don't have to leave your 1 o'clock in the afternoon meeting, so it comes in very late, stays here, you know it's going out in the morning, and goes out at 5:30. It means you get into San Francisco before they stop all the traffic from the Brazilias, so you will make all your connections to back east or Texas or
No, you only have to get up
go.
at 3 or 3:30 in the morning. It would be awesome.
Yeah, I don't know, but that one will be
We do, you know, and I don't, Jim, I don't know if you can relate to United, but their San Francisco setup,
It's a mess.
it's horrible. It is absolutely horrible. Just even the maze that exists of getting into one terminal and shuttling you to the other.
You get to ride the bus?
But that, like, they...
Read it a couple of times.
Oh, yeah, we did, didn't we? We're going just for the heck of it.
All right, already.
Anyway, enough about that, but thank you for showing up, and hopefully this will get pushed forward, and hopefully you have good news in September. A public comment on this item. Sandra, if you want to speak, you might. Yeah, you got the walk is included in there, Catherine, so.
Catherine Murray, I'm with the city, and I'm also on the airport JPA. Misha didn't mention it, but in March I asked for a matrix on where we were with our permits, and so we received it dated April 15th. So our board for the airport has been aware of where we were with the permits, and knew that we were lacking in having a complete application for the Coastal Commission. The Coastal Commission met with the California cities and counties in December of last year in order to work out having a more timely process for CDPs and a better relationship with cities and counties. So I don't think that it's the Coastal Commission's necessarily their fault that we're behind in what we're doing. I think that some board members have wanted to fight the Coastal Commission, which made no sense to me, since we, as you said, must have this airport. And we've also, some of our board members on the airport have been very objecting to Pacific Shores as the mitigation site. So I would suggest that part of the issue with all of these holdups is with our board. I've worked very hard to make sure I understand and knew all about this complicated issue. I was on the alternate for 2 years, and then I really do my homework. As you can see, I really study our board agendas and packets. I called, when I first got on the board, I talked to Melissa Kramer and Bob Merrill down at the Eureka Coastal office. I've spoken with Misha in the past, and Susan Dowdery and Jim Bernard. So I worked very hard to understand this whole issue and how complicated it is. And when we voted to have optional sites, we call it option 2, I believe, at our last board meeting, one of our board members voted to take off 25 acres of optional mitigation, which made no sense to me, and there was no explanation for it. So this process has been going on for at least 5 years, and I think that we have made mistakes in trying to fight coastal and not wanting to use the identified side of the Pacific Shores. I think if we would have done it when we had the opportunity, we would have, there would have been a missed opportunity for Mr. Smith to file a lawsuit against us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Sandra Jerebeck, and I live in Del Norte County. And I have actually been working on various coastal permits as a consultant for almost 20 years. And, you know, I have to say, I think the board lacks appreciation for how much the Coastal Commission staff has reached out a helping hand to our little airport, which we all love, which we all use. I've never seen the coastal staff try so hard to accommodate and move forward with something as they have with this airport authority and the airport staff. They've offered you a tremendous compromise, which is going to save our little airport. And they don't normally do this. And so I'm going to remind you that the San Diego and Santa Barbara airports were required to do 4-to-1 wetland creation as their mitigation plans. They had to create 4 times as many acres of wetland as they destroyed during their projects at the San Diego and Santa Barbara airports. You know, some of these wetland restoration projects that are approved by coastal end up doing 5-to-1 wetland creation. So this compromise that was offered to you in the spring was huge. And I don't hear any appreciation for that fact. Also, normally you don't receive any credit for acquisitions as part of a mitigation. Nobody gets that. Up and down the state of California, nobody gets that. This has been offered to this airport for a variety of complicated reasons, which I don't have time to address. But normally you acquire a property, you don't get any credit for the acquisition or the money you spend on that. You only get 4-to-1 credit for the wetlands that you create on that property, and the cost of acquisition is the cost of doing restoration business. Okay, they're letting you have some credit for acquisitions. I'm amazed. I'm absolutely amazed. I began to attend the Airport Commission meetings in January and have attended faithfully every month because I heard something that was disturbing to me in terms of waste of public funds. The Airport Authority has spent 4 years, I believe, unanimously approving a mitigation plan at Pacific Shores. And the Airport Authority has authorized the expenditure of nearly $1 million of what I think is federal taxpayer money. Correct me if I'm wrong. Developing that mitigation plan, which is halfway done.
Sandra, I'm going to need you to wrap it up, please.
And I heard that for political reasons, this was going sideways, and then there was a frivolous lawsuit, and it went further sideways to alternative sites, which will require the expenditure of another $1 million or $2 million to develop and complete. Thank you.
Next speaker.
My name is Patty McCleary. I live in Del Norte County up in Haiuchi, and I wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge everyone in the room who is working on behalf of improving our airport. Last fall, my 85-year-old mother flew up from Southern California to see me, and she stayed for an entire week, and that she could come and arrive here and I could pick her up and I could show her all of the glory that is what this place is about was I very much appreciate. I also wanted to take a moment to appreciate the work of Jim Bernard, who has captained this process for many, many years, and I appreciate his explanation of the timeline and the benchmarks, looking back and looking ahead, what we need to do to succeed. I would like to reflect, finally, on what I see as the single barrier in our path to implementing the $1 million plan that consultants have prepared for the mitigation component of the airport plan. A lawsuit was filed. There are 2 plaintiffs to that lawsuit. The 2 plaintiffs each own a single parcel in Pacific Shores. Those 2 lot owners live in Southern California, and combined they own 1 acre in Del Norte County, 1 acre in Pacific Shores. And it would be my hope that that lawsuit, which attorneys and experts have deemed to be frivolous, will go away, and the plan as paid for and designed will be implemented. Thank you.
Thanks. Next speaker.
Hi, I'm Eileen Cooper. I'm very disturbed at the 1-to-1 ratio that's being offered. Backing away from Pacific Shores also is very disturbing. I can understand the value of acquiring getting credit for acquiring Pacific Shores lots, because that area is incurring so much damage that acquisition, just acquisition, does have habitat value. But getting land credit for something like Bay Meadows doesn't make sense. And recently, a complete, very thorough study of performance of wetland mitigation was put out by the Water Quality Board, and it clearly demonstrates that one-to-one replacement doesn't replace the wetlands. Man-made wetlands fail compared to natural wetlands. They fail at an alarmingly large rate. And so your one-to-one is like giving us a half an acre, maybe, of wetlands to every acre. And I would object to that, and I will strongly voice it. And that's not fair, to be downgrading the wetland mitigation to such a point that we're not even restoring what we're taking. There's a reason why there's a buffer, a protective buffer. And I will fight that. I think it's a very bad precedent. Also, I think you're spreading yourself out too thin with the different alternatives. Ag land is not appropriate mitigation for wetlands. Ag land is valuable. You made sure that our LCP, our general plan, protected ag land in strong language. It's in there. I would say don't spread yourself too thin on doing all kinds of studies that's going to take out ag land. That's silly. And Bay Meadows, this is a plan that's coming in at the last minute. I might have never loved the idea that we had huge development plans so close to Lake Laurel and so far out from the main core of development of the county, closer to Crescent City. But, maybe this would be desirable from an environmental standpoint to have less development out there. But certainly better than taking ag land out. That's,
Ms. Cooper,
it does have impacts to development potential. But anyway, this is all coming in a last-minute rewrite of an entire thing and it's so sketchy. I'm surprised that you're even getting on the agenda for this year.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, I'm Connie Morrison. I'm from the county. I was out getting a sandwich and I grabbed the newspaper and I saw that you were meeting today about the airport authority scrambling to finish environmental study. I have 3 minutes. Okay. About the covenant that was given to Ms. McClure in 2002 that you signed, that there is not supposed to be any irrigation, digging, a whole list of things that are not supposed to be done to that land was recorded with misinformation and missing information in 2002. When I spoke with Kevin Meyer in 2010 or 11, after he had realized that the covenant had misinformation and missing information on it, he submitted one that Mr. Finigan signed in 2007 that tells all of the regulations and what you have to do anything with that land. It includes 2 parcels that's almost 20 acres. It was on the national priority list, and all of a sudden it is off the national priority list for some strange reason. I don't know why it was at one time, and the reason there's a covenant on it is because there were 1,650 55-gallon drums of pesticides buried at the airport. They came down to check on it, and 1,100 55-gallon drums are missing. And as Mr. Kevin Meyer said, that is the real shame of this whole thing. Somewhere in Delaware County, there are 1,100 55-gallon drums of pesticide buried somewhere. And I get galled every time I read that we're going to do this new project and there's under a negative declaration. no possible reason there could be any harm done to people or animals or anybody who walks on soil, breathes the air, or drinks the water. I don't know if this has been considered, but before you do any project, check out, don't do a negative declaration, that's wasted money. Check and see if the ground is soiled with toxins. And then you cannot do that there. Unfortunately, there was an accident or an incident, 2 of them, behind Safeway and at the airport. We need to know what happened, what the quality of the air and the water is at this point. You want to dig through that, and I know that is on the covenant, that you cannot be digging water trenches out to the airport. Do it right. If you're not going to do it right, don't do it at all. It's a waste of money. Check the area, make sure that it is environmentally safe to work with, and then make your plans.
Thank you. Any speakers? Okay, I am going to close public comment, bring back to the board. Any other comments before we go on to the next item on the agenda?
Wow.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Well, it's fine to come to the defense of the Coastal Commission, how wonderful they are. Why aren't they wonderful to everybody? Why are they only wonderful to us? I mean, why aren't they doing this for everybody? They should be an agency that should be doing everything they can to make sure your permit goes through. I don't have a problem with them helping us out all they can. As far as man-made wetlands, what do you think the airport is? Everything out there is man-made. It was man-made. It's a man-made wetland. Why can't we replace it with a man-made wetland? So much stuff going on. We've spent too much money. Evidently, maybe now we know who turned us in for not spending our money correctly. There's a lot of stuff going on here. You talk about last-minute stuff that came in. The piece of property that wanted to be that Ms. Murray brought up was the very last thing that came in. That came in, you talk about getting blindsided. That last piece of property that came in that was supposed to be included was the very last minute thing. So anyway, I find it a little comical, a little sad, a little disturbing of most all the comments that were made.
Supervisor McClure.
I want to clarify a couple of things in that, yes, I think that the coastal staff has been very helpful, and I think that if you would have looked back 4 years ago on an application in this area, coastal staff was not as cooperative. I believe that the Coastal Commission itself, there is a paradigm shift in making it a more which is not going to be happy with a lot of people, but a more user-compatible, trying to find solution agency, as opposed to one that makes doesn't try to fix anything, doesn't try to get along with anything, and doesn't give anything up. In fact, we just recently had a commissioner that resigned because of the position of the commission is taking a turn where the commissioner resigned because he said, you can't compromise. There can never be something special in an area, and we have to hang on to whatever we can get, and you never give an inch. And he found himself at a large minority on the commission, and the commission staff is turning to asking local governments how to better serve them, asking, it didn't just come about to look at a one-to-one for restoration and credit for acquisition. That came through discussions for me with staff saying, can't you think outside of this box when you're looking at a community that has lots of wetland? And how can we protect the upland that's part of that wetland? And it came through those kinds of discussions. It doesn't just happen overnight, but I do believe that there is a paradigm shift, and if people are paying attention and reading different, where the commission is actually trying to find solutions to problems rather than saying, no, this is the bottom line and that's the end of the conversation. So that's how the conversation came about. I think that our staff, and I think that Heidi, gave a valiant effort for pulling together the information about the possibility of alternative sites, which was not in her job because she's not an airport authority, Border Coast Airport Authority employee, but she did it because she was a county employee, but she did it because everybody's trying to find solution of how do we get this runway safety area done, how do we get the new terminal built, how do we move forward on projects. I've worked on 3 projects independent of the board getting coastal development permits, and all 3 of those projects went through. But all 3 of those projects went through because there was an enormous amount of discussion and planning and what ifs and can you do this. And people need to know that when this report comes out, and I'm sure that the consultants know, that there may be 8 standard conditions and 22 special conditions that have to be discussed and worked out. And you know, I've seen time and time again where there'll be an item coming onto the agenda and there's one more special condition that the applicant can't agree with staff, and that's where the commission comes in and approves. But most of the time it's that the applicant and staff are able to maneuver their way through those special conditions. So I don't think it's all up for a loss.
Supervisor Finigan, are you?
Oh, half my head's swimming too, so I'm not going to say everything that I have to say. I'm with you, Gerry. You know, we heard from one individual that actually spoke at a Border Coast Regional Airport Authority and commended us for the great job we were doing and to please stay the course. And today she gets up there and admonishes us for the ratio that we're giving us. Who the heck is us? I'm us. You know, the community is us. It's not some group with special interest. You know, I was at that meeting on May 16th with the attorney for the Coastal Commission, with Bob Merrill, and with the lead staff there as well. And the plea was not only to be on the August agenda, but to make it clear why we needed to be there, and also make it very clear that we will give you whatever we have, but we cannot give you what we do not have. And that was the genesis for the negotiation for the mitigation ratio to be lowered. We cannot give what we do not have. There was agreement, and then the clarification changed when some of the people that you've probably heard speak here today got a hold of it and didn't like it and are going to speak out again at the Coastal Commission. The last thing I'm going to say is I really take exception to that the Border Coast Board is the problem. We've been challenging solutions since I helped architect the genesis of that authority, period.
Supervisor Gitlin.
Thank you, Chair. Supervisor Finigan, I want to echo from the point where you said you couldn't serve on an agency you wanted to kill. And what comes into my mind is remarks made by Dr. Charles Lester at the Coastal Counties CSAC meeting 3 months ago, at how the Coastal Commission needs to be more user-friendly and help our communities. And I challenged him on his remarks at that same meeting. Chair Sullivan, you were there at that same meeting I was. And I asked Dr. Lester, I said, I hear what you're saying, sir, but your remarks don't match your actions. Your rhetoric doesn't match your actions. And I referred to the very issues that we're talking here today, this one in particular. The bottom line, folks, is we're not getting our airport expansion. All this talk and all these back and forths, we're not getting it. And the results are not there. 4-1, 2-1, none to none. We're not getting the permit. And that is what we need to look at. We need to look at what are we going to do? How are we going to grow our community? We need roads and we need a vibrant airport. And we have an opponent in a $16.3 million agency which answers apparently to no one, and it's preventing our growth. And this is dangerous. And it's come to a point where we're frustrated and we're trying to reach out, and I hear you, Supervisor Finigan, we have to work with them. We have to work with them. Well, what happens when we have nothing left to give? We're down to 219 square miles. What happens when there's nothing left? Then what do we have to give? Well, then we own nothing. So I'm hopeful, Mr. Bernard, that this September 13th, 11th, 13th meeting is going to bring out the new face of the Coastal Commission in their rhetoric. And I'm hopeful, Misha, that you'll have some good news to report to us, that we're on the process to actually getting our permit and actually moving toward, just as you say, Chair Sullivan, we need this airport. There is no second on this. I hope we get that. And I'm patiently, I'm optimistic, but I'm highly skeptical of what this result will be. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, I do appreciate the fact that we are getting down to some reasonable mitigation on it. I don't agree that you can compare us to San Diego and Santa Barbara. We have far more public land ownership. You're asking us to give more a percentage of our land up than a San Diego or a Santa Barbara. So I don't think that's apples and oranges. I do appreciate the fact that, as Jim had mentioned, that coastal staff is beginning to work with us, but let's not forget about it. Everything came to a head on this thing because there wasn't a lot of work going on. And this kindler, gentler Coastal Commission, I'm waiting to see it. I want to see it happen, because that's not the way it was when I got on the Board of Supervisors. It was an adversarial relationship. It was nobody, you're going to have to work with us. It's the coastal gods. And I am hoping that with Mr. Lester in there and the staff's willingness to work, that's what we want, because we have to go through other agencies in the process to do this. But it's extremely frustrating. I'm hoping that we do get this done and move on to other projects, because it is an essential part of the airport. So anyway, we're going to move on. On to item 18, information review of Highway Safety Improvement Program, HSIP, application to Caltrans for widening of the shoulders along Elk Valley Crossroads between U.S. Highway 101 and Wonder Stump, as presented by Assistant Engineer. Roseanne?
Okay. Back in May, I came to the board to request support for submitting an HSIP application on behalf of the county for Elk Valley Crossroad between Highway 101 and Wonder Stump Road. And during the process, which began at the beginning of May and ended at the end of June, the application was modified. The original cost-benefit ratio was 1.0, but we found that by adding an additional countermeasure, which included restriping the road and putting a rumble strip down the center line, we actually could get a higher cost-benefit ratio. And we extended the corridor for that particular countermeasure from 101 all the way to Lake Earl. So we have a bigger project. We have the match money secured by the local transportation commission, assuming the project's successful, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention. So the shoulder winding would only occur from 101 to Wonder Stump, because that's the only portion that needs it. So that's that project. And then the other project, we actually worked with a consultant to develop these applications after meeting with the local transportation commission. And it was identified that Parkway Drive, by adding a rumble strip, signage, delineators, and things like that, the safety would be improved at a relatively high cost-benefit ratio. And so we completed an application for that particular project, and we did not bring it to the board. And so if you do wish to pull it, that's okay. But we felt it was in the best interest of the community.
No, go forward. Yeah.
We did complete it because we didn't have a lot of time, and it was in the best interest of the community. So
okay. Any questions from?
No, good job.
Dave.
We'll go. Well, my district, and thank you very, very much. I mean, I know there's a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit on Parkway, but people still pass, and that rumble strip ought to slow them down. And then, of course, Elk Valley Crossroads, excellent. Thank you very, very much for your work.
So there was a request a few months ago for a reduced speed between 101 on the crossroad there. Will this help? Is the plan to assist? Are there going to be some kind of slowing devices, or even the painting?
At this point, the primary accidents are vehicular, and so the goal is to address that. It may include reducing the lane widths as a traffic calming method. That wasn't part of our application, but the restriping was, so I think we'd be okay doing that.
Okay, because I know we've had neighborhood people in and then people at the school.
It is an
Find that
issue.
it's a little fast.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that would be great to be considered.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks for that. Good news. I know we've talked to
Nice
Transportation Commission or Executive Director, and we're the 4th highest on accident ratios in Delaware County in the state. So the more projects we can do on the HIP program, the better.
Good job.
Number 19, direct staff to prepare a letter to Six Rivers National Forest District Forester stating disappointing regarding the lack of additional locations for upcoming, not upcoming, but the meeting that Smith River NRA Restoration and Motorized Travel Management Workshop as requested by myself. Supervisor Hemmingsen.
I think we need to add a little more to this than just what you've got going here, because the disappointment is just not in informing the community or outreaching to the entire community. It's also the outreach to the county, to the Board of Supervisors, to the coordination process, giving us a set of maps that were inaccurate, and information that was incomplete, and then giving that to the public after we were supposed to be looking at what they gave us, which was inconsistent with what they had given the public. It's just wrong. So I think we need to go a step further in this whole process that they're bringing. It's a slap in the face to the county. It's a slap in the face to the community to have one meeting, in Gasky, where the biggest concentration of population is certainly in the city area. I think everything they've done from start to finish on this restoration and travel management process has been wrong, and I think we need staff to look into the legal staff to look into the to help writing this letter, because I think there's some legal issues that need to be dealt with. So much of this plan, it's against our general plan to begin with, in them reducing the number of, just for an example, in their what we think they're going to come out with a preferred alternative, they're going to reduce the number of dispersed campsites. They're going to reduce the mileage, the road mileage. They're going to reduce, and that's not part of our general plan. So I think we need to, more than just the disappointment of not having additional meetings or not having a broader outreach, I think we need to.
I think to throw it in with that also is the map they are referring to as their base map has never been approved. Didn't go through the regular clearinghouse thing that a federal map is supposed to do. So they're referring to this thing like it was approved, and it's not. And unfortunately, I think the more they do that, people are going to take as an example that this thing has been vetted out and approved. It has not.
So you need a motion, or you going to direct them?
I think give them direction. Unless any other supervisor, any public comment on that issue? Ms. Cooper.
Hi, Eileen Cooper. I think the Forest Service went a little beyond what due process, requires. Usually we have a scoping, which we had quite a while ago. And people submitted comments. You submitted comments. We submitted comments. We spent a whole summer. These plans are about that close to what we spent the whole summer working out. Only they even have more features that came in during the scoping, the new scoping, for OHVs, and they have the elements that were negotiated. So I think it's highly unusual for an agency to extend themselves and present their drafts ahead of when the draft EIR is released. You have your scoping, then the draft EIR is then you have public comment again. This was an interim extra step of courtesy that the Forest Service extended to you, and I don't think you're recognizing that. That courtesy is to show you the draft maps that before the draft EIR was released, to show you, to ask you, okay, this is what we think everybody's ideas were, and here's what we want to reflect correctly what's going into the draft EIS, and so we're going to present these maps ahead of the release of the draft EIS. That's a very courteous interim step that never happens. I see no recognition what we've asked for, what we've negotiated. I don't see very much basis for this. Showmanship. I see a plan that is very close to what we all expressed we wanted at those negotiation tables. I don't think it helps bring the community together to create, this controversy when, there is going to be a compromise, and it is pretty close to what we all sat down and said what was most important to us. So it doesn't serve us well to continue on this way. They were very courteous. You're supposed to comment now. And this was very close to the negotiation. Thank you.
I have to put in a brief comment. It has nothing to do with courtesy. It has to do with the requirement of coordination, number one, early and often, and as well as to adhering to the memorandum of understanding between CSAC, RCRC, BLM, and Forest Service, that there will be communication prior to vetting with the public, period. Check into it.
There's one thing that gets lost in all this. It seems that instead of the Forest Service looking out what's best for the forest, how we're going to prevent wildfires, how we're going to be able to access resources, that it comes down between user groups and the environmental groups, but not what's best for the forest and the community. It's what's best for one or the other. And I think part of that should be what is it that's best for the forest? What is it that's going to protect our forest to the extent they need to be protected also? I think that's part of the equation, not all of the equation, but it's part of the equation that I think that they're so worried about a lawsuit on one side or the other that the forest is getting lost in the whole process. And it's going to burn up. And what are we going to be left with? We're going to be left with no resources, no forest.
How could anybody object to asking for more locations to hold workshops for better input? How can you do that? Move to send the letter.
Okay. Second. Moved and second. We've already done public comment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? It will be sent. It's passed unanimously. Item 20, direct staff to prepare a letter to National Park Service regarding Redwood Hostel Relocation Initiative as requested by Supervisor McClure.
Yes, I brought this forward to the board because for 25 years the Redwood National Park was home to a 30-bed hostel, and then in 2010 the hostel was forced to close because of not being a secure place, and there were other issues at the site. And so the Redwood National Park, as part of their general management plan, identifies the hostel as one of the low-cost visitor serving essentials to our community. In fact, the hostel had over 115,000 nights of accommodating visitors. So it was a very popular site, and in theory, you get a bicyclist in their 20s coming through. They're going to come back in their 30s with their children. I mean, once we can get people visiting our region, they will come back many times throughout their lifetime. Not that it's only young people that visit hostels. But what happened was that the Park Service received a Coastal Conservancy grant for $144,000. they were to match that grant with $30,000, so it was $182,000 grant, and in that the park put out what their criteria was for evaluation, was that they wanted to locate the hostel within the Redwood National and State Parks in coastal Del Norte. They wanted access to park resources. They wanted access to the California Coastal Trail. They wanted to provide low-cost accommodations, provide with coastal views and access to the coast, promotes sustainability by offering easy access to visitors and access to commercial visitors serving centers. So they knew they were looking at a site in Del Norte County. They looked at 3 sites on Enderts Beach Road. They looked at 1 site in Mill Creek, and they have returned the money and said it's simply not, and said that they were returning the money because the preferred sites were in non-developed land. Well, that was going to be a given, that it was non-developed land. And so I think that it's time for us to, that I don't think that they've acted responsible or credible in really attempting to bring a hostel to Del Norte County, and that we need to ask them to reconsider, to contact the Coastal Conservancy, say that they want to revisit, and that they should select one of the sites on the Enderts Beach Road. Because if the Enderts Beach Road is the home of one of their main offices, so should it be okay for a hostel. I mean, one of the things that they said to me, they said, well, there's lots of car clouts there. It could be dangerous. I said, well, but if there's a 24/7 presence there, maybe it wouldn't be as dangerous. And that there was, well, possibly there might be some wetland mitigation. And I said, well, wetland mitigation is not impossible to respond to. And there was a complaint, apparently, something about it being black bear habitat and elk habitat, and that means that anybody that lives out in Elk Valley is in black bear habitat and elk habitat. And in fact, down on Pebble Beach, I had a neighbor who hung up bird feeders, and the tree was all broken, and only the black seeds were eaten, and it was determined that it was a bear. So even on Pebble Beach, it could be black bear habitat. So I'm hoping that this...
Possums.
I'm hoping... No, they decided it was a bear based on... But I wrote a letter just as a supervisor, but I would like to possibly submit this letter to staff and let them rework it, and ask that we authorize the chair to sign a letter that encourages both this national park.
Is that a motion?
Yes, it's a motion.
Second.
Thank
It's been
you.
moved and seconded. Any public comment? Come on up.
There's a shot.
If you can, try not to use all 3 minutes up in the process. You need to hit her mic, please.
I walked that area along Enderts Beach where the sites were with a biologist, amphibian expert, and familiar with wetland issues. Unfortunately, that whole little terrace that sits right above of Enderts Beach Road is extensive creeks and wetlands all through it. It's probably infeasible. When the Forest Service says it doesn't really have a good site, I think there's substance to that. There is going to be a huge septic system for a facility of that size, and that whole terrace is wetlands and streams. And drainages, well, anyway, inappropriate area. And so all the people pushing for the hostel were so insistent of it going down there, and then the other site was just up on the hill, which I thought was a good alternative. Nobody wants it, or I don't know, very few people want it there, so they feel that they don't really have a site. You're not pushing for the obvious environmentally correct alternative. Mill Creek, which is having it up at Mill Creek, doesn't have any of these wetland issues. I mean, thank you, but you're inviting the Park Service to spend its limited funds on a quagmire, a wetland and water quality quagmire. So I suggest they not step into that quagmire. Also, our town is very situated very close to, right in the park. It's right there. And we have all the strips of hotels all up and down the street. And when people come to the beach, it's so gorgeous. Do we really want to see another, essentially, a hotel there when we have all these private businesses taking care of needs? And they're not very expensive. Many of our hotels are not very expensive either, and privately owned, and be fine for bikers to come visit. But I do say that you're not going to get rid of the bears, you're not going to get rid of the elk. It's very wild. There's bobcats hunting there, and there's extensive wetlands. So you're just inviting the park to get into a quagmire.
Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to thank Supervisor McClure for bringing this forward, that we should not be encouraging the Park Service to discourage tourism, as they have done all too well for the past decade.
So maybe a 2x2 also could be called.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. I think it's, I mean, isn't there a ranger house right on Ender's Drive, or Ender's Street? Put it where that ranger's house is. Let's let the public get a chance to stay there, and the ones that can't afford to,
but the office is there.
But the office is, put it where the office is at, and
on that landing.
A lot of these folks staying at hostels can't afford to stay at a hotel. That's why they stay at a hostel.
We could all just move out.
Let's just leave it for the bears and the trees and the
I'm just curious to know, would there be a coastal permit required on Enders Road?
Absolutely.
Well, that'll take us several years, Ms. Cooper, so hold your hat on that. All right, so what are our choices? What is this letter exactly saying, and what are our choices? Can you please review
I have
that?
a copy of my letter. What I was just asking, I sent my letter to the regional director asking that
they revisit.
That they revisit this, but I was just going to give a copy of my letter to staff and ask them to say that we really want them to continue in the endeavor of locating a hostel, and that we want that hostel in Del Norte County, because that was another piece of the discussion was, well, maybe the hostel could go in Oric somewhere. And I'm going, wait a minute. If I have 115,000 overnights, I possibly have 115,000 visits to Safeway or to the Wild Rivers Market, or I have visits to the movie theater, or no, we want it to be here, because that is a driver of tourism. Sometimes people think that the folks on bikes may not be spending a lot of cash, but chances are their pocketbooks are open when they stop and need to refuel. So to me, it's simply not acceptable that the Redwood National and State Park abandon Del Norte County's promise for a hostel.
Well,
and the
I think
hostel,
we're
by
trying to
the way,
encourage.
is not built by the park. The hostel would be built by...
Even though you can't blame them for the pushback that they're going to get.
Yeah, but I told them to belly up.
Yeah.
Take it, because you can't move, you can't have threats. Because if you operate on threats, government comes to a stop.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Okay, it passes unanimously. And Jay, legislative and budget and other matters.
I touched on the budget a little bit earlier. Unless the board has any questions, we will be coming back with a report on the next agenda, setting up the final budget hearing process and timelines.
Oh, when and what time do we determine on the Sutter Coast special meeting? Do we get a time on that?
Early as possible.
2 or 3 o'clock?
1.
You had an afternoon conflict, correct?
Well, I could have to be in Sacramento that evening. It'd be nice to get it.
Okay, well, let's make it 1 o'clock. Is the chamber available? Okay, so we'll have that is specifically only to...
I can't make this earlier. I'm looking at, what's
No,
our date
because
here this Friday?
we're getting down on the number of...
What's it?
Thursday.
And just to chime in on future budget and legislative matters.
Okay, so it's 1 o'clock. Is that what we're all agreeing on this? So
Legislative matters. Unfortunately, the Assembly and the Senate are back off a recess, and they feel they have to do something. So watch for the chaos to hit Sacramento.
Yeah, we've been in touch with our advocate, and we're preparing for any type of support or defense of any type of language that comes in. So we'll be coming before the board with any letters. What I would like to ask, though, that we have 5 to 10 minutes to go into closed session on a personnel matter very quickly.
Okay, just wanted to, before we close the open, yeah, it needs to be, it can't be at 1. I can't do it at 1 o'clock at all. So it'll be 2 o'clock or is people available in the morning?
11's fine with me.
I could do 11. 11. Well, they'll spend the night in the airport. All right, we're gonna adjourn and go into closed session.
Go right to...
And then we will have a special meeting for the Board of Supervisors on this Thursday at 11 o'clock in the board chambers.